Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about What If Naruto Reborn as Percy Jackson Universe Part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for Part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. Sasuke didn't know how to feel. In fact, he could feel nothing at all. Being dead did that to you. It could be seen as both a blessing and a curse for him. His final moments weren't proud and were full of pain and a crushing sense of failure. But it was beginning to annoy him. He couldn't move, he couldn't see, none of his senses were responding. He was forced to rest in the confines of his mind, if you could call it that, being intangible, and muddle over his life of Sasuke Uchiha was filled with failure. He failed to realize the truth behind his clan and Itachi. He failed Konoha. He failed his family. He failed the world. As time passed, Sasuke finally took the time to consider himself and his lack of surroundings. He honestly expected something more when the Shikigami claimed him. Even when he was dying during the Fourth Great Ninja War, he was able to do something. From what he heard from Kakashi, being dead wasn't the end of the road. There was purgatory where he had connected with his father. Later, when Obito manifested his chakra from beyond the grave, led him to believe his sight the least that would remain. Was this what the Sage of Six Paths had felt for the thousands of years he waited for him and Naruto to connect to his plane? A newfound respect found its way into him for the old man. Being stuck like this for so long, and still being sane enough to help save the world, was worthy of respect. He wondered how Naruto and the rest of Team 7 would take his loss. Naruto would probably cry and call him a bastard. Kakashi would mourn, thinking he failed him. Sakura, she would blame herself for his death, being unable to be there for him when he needed her. Even if it takes a while, they'll get over his loss and move on. At the very least, they would be safe. Safe from the foes he took with him to death, and safe from him in case he lost himself again. Enough pondering. Focusing on where he imagined his chakra to be, he began on trying to get a reaction. If he was going to be stuck wherever he was, then he wanted to have some semblance of control. It took a while, but finally something shifted where his chakra should be. Suddenly, barraging him like an explosion, he could feel again. The wails of a baby sounded from a hospital. A new mother held her child in her arms, as sighs of relief sounded throughout the room. It had taken hours before the head had finally popped out, and the doctors were beginning to consider a C-section. A beautiful woman with long, silky black hair and chocolate eyes wearily smiled at the bundle in her arms. Tears of happiness flowed from her eyes down her face. Heya Arakawa was racing through emotions as her son cried in her arms. Gosh, son, she was actually a mother now. The reality of the situation was beginning to settle in as she thought back to the months leading up to this had been hard. She had barely been in her 20s when she had met him. Heya had just finished her shift at work and was walking down the busy sidewalk when she bumped into had looked up and met the most beautiful pair of electric blue eyes she had ever seen. The owner of those eyes was a handsome man with black hair and a short, neatly trimmed beard. She remembered being frozen in place as she stared at him, a blush creeping into her cheeks. His gaze bore into her as he smiled, asking her if she was all right while introducing himself to her. Shaking out of her stupor, she had smiled back with a sorry for bumping him before saying her name. He greeted her, then invited her to a local restaurant. She always had a weak spot for anyone tall, dark, and handsome, so in the heat of the moment she agreed, not knowing what she had just started. After the initial meeting, they had exchanged numbers and began meeting each other more and more as time passed. With each encounter, her feeling grew. Until finally, 9 months ago, he revealed himself as the king of gods from Greek myths, Zeus, revealing to her a whole new world of supernatural. He warned her of the consequences of her love, and she met his eyes like their first meeting, and spoke. I love you, God or mortal. Whether I will see you again or not, I will always love you. The love and admiration in his eyes was all she needed. Back to the present. Her motherly instincts kicked into high gear as she wiped the tears from her eyes before whispering to her baby. A soft tone marred her lips. As if time had stopped, her baby boy quieted. Electric blue eyes curiously peered up at her. Beautiful, she thought. His face was adorable and round. His eyes were the same as his father's, but the rest of his features resembled hers. Small tufts of silky black hair on his head met smooth, milky pale skin. She could already tell he would be a looker as he grew up. A soft giggle left her mouth at the thought. It was going to be hard raising a child as a single mother, but she could do it. If Zeus could spend thousands of years working hard as a ruler, keeping her and keeping the world safe, then this was the least she could do to repay him. All that was left was to give her baby a name. She wasn't sure if it was going to be a boy or girl, and she didn't want to pick a name prematurely. But she agreed it needed to be noble, powerful. Like him. Then, it struck her, a powerful, Noble name that pays homage to the sky and to her late mother's culture. It was barely a whisper as the name left her lips, but it was enough for a breeze to flow between her and her son. Indra, that will be your name. My lovely Indra Arakawa. Thunder rumbled outside, and like a sixth sense, she knew it was approval, and a warmth passed through her heart. 6 years later. Sasuke, or going by his new name Indra, was having a terrible morning. What could possibly make the stoic, formerly all-powerful Uchiha have a bad day, you ask? It's a rather simple matter really, school. The day he had been dreading since his rebirth had arrived. Starting school again. He had finished it once, and he was not looking forward to go through it again a second time. He was never a social butterfly like Naruto, and was even worse with kids. He cringed thinking of the few interactions he'd had with children in the elemental nations. His mom had woken him up earlier than he would have liked and proceeded to smother him with love. He may or may not have enjoyed it. Not that he would tell anyone if he did. His mother was a beautiful woman. Similar to his original mom in that respect. She had a face shape similar to the legendary Sannin Tsunade. With hair like his and a personality that made him feel safe and at home whenever she spoke, his worries melt away. He's not sure how he would have coped without her. She left his room shortly after, her feet softly tapping on the tile floor as she walked to the kitchen to make breakfast. Indra watched her back for a moment, still groggy from sleep. He turned to look at the mirror behind his bed and saw his hair was sticking in every direction except down. Seems his unruly hair passed with him into this life. After trying and failing to make himself as presentable as a 6-year-old with bedhead can be, he slipped the covers off his legs and swung them off the bed. His feet touched the ground with a thump and paddled out of his room and into the kitchen where he saw his mom humming a tune softly while whisking eggs. He stood silently in the doorway listening. She was a good singer, not in a professional kind of way but in a way that made people happy. It was an old song, he couldn't quite remember the name but it had an upbeat tune. Something with Caroline in it, he thinks. As the song came to a close his mother turned toward him, a smile played on her lips. Well, good morning, Indra. I'm making tamagoyaki. Would you mind setting the table for me? She asked as she started rolling the eggs. Okay, Kaa-san, Indra voiced as he finally walking into the room. Opening a cabinet, he retrieved a step stool he unfortunately had to use due to his stature. Stupid short legs. I can't wait until I'm older so I can rid of it, he grumbled in his head. Reaching up and opening one of the upper cabinets above the counter, he grabbed 2 plates and settled to glasses on them before stepping down slowly as to not drop them. Walking over to their small dining room, he placed a cup and plate at each seat before sitting down. Moments later, his mother came over with a large dish, setting it in the center of the table. His eyes brightened at the sight. Steam rose off the tamagoyaki causing a pleasant smell to waft through the air. But that's not what got Indra excited. Beside the meal were slices of the best food in the whole world, tomatoes. Patience non-existent when faced with the delicacy, he went to grab a piece before a hand batted him away. A look of betrayal passed his face. Not yet, mister. Aren't you forgetting something? His mom asks. Glancing up at her then following her gaze down to his plate, he realized he had indeed forgot something. His eyes widened with realization and he jumped off the seat and ran to the kitchen to grab forks. Don't forget to wash your hands too. I don't want you getting sick on the first day of kindergarten, his mother yelled. Indra's ears turned red at the comment. It was embarrassing for him to lose himself to childish temptation and forget things. A quick rinse and the clang of silverware is all Heya heard before Indra darted back into his seat, before jumping to grab the tomato. Pure bliss showed on his face as he chewed. HN, maybe today isn't so bad. It's not like anything bad can happen at school, he sighed in content. Tomatoes always made things better. After breakfast his mother directed him to the shower and helped him get ready for school. Not that he needed help, he was just indulging her. He put on his fresh cloths after he showered and looked in the bathroom mirror. He wore a black polo shirt with a lightning bolt stitched on the shoulder and a pair of blue jeans. He felt a bit stuffy dressing up, but his mother told him that he needed to look nice for his first day. Nodding to himself, he grabbed his toothbrush and scrubbed his pearly whites clean. Spitting out the toothpaste, he rinsed his mouth, tongue gliding over the distinct hole where incisor had been days earlier. He lost his first tooth a week ago, and his mother would coo at him whenever he smiled. That's also when he learned about the tooth fairy, or lack of one. His mother told him his tooth would be replaced with a gift if he put it under his pillow before bed. Though being a former shinobi led him to wake up that same night, and surprise, his mom was the tooth fairy. He never told her he was awake. Indra. It's time to go, sweetie, his mother called. Slipping his socks on, he paced to the door where he saw his mother ready herself, keys in hand. No backing out now. Stepping outside, his face was hit with the cool breeze of September. Grabbing his mother's hand, they walked towards their car. She opened the door for him, and he squeezed past her into his booster seat. Another reason for him wanting to grow up. Those seats really made him feel like a baby. He would have been perfectly fine in a normal one. That's a lie, his stubbornness was both an ally and enemy. All buckled up, they began their drive to his new school. I suppose there's worse places to be, Indra mused. Indra was going crazy. He was right in dreading this day. Frozen in place, he observed the chaos around him. Children were screaming, crying, running, and every other ing that equated to unruly behavior. His mother had left shortly after he got to class, taking a few pictures of him along the way, dropping his backpack in his hands when they got to his classroom. Quietly walking over to his cubby and hanger, he placed his backpack down and trudged to the back of the room and took a seat at a table. Resting his head on his hands, he reminisced back to his days in the academy. Even if he didn't pay too much attention to anyone at the time, he was certain everyone was more orderly. Okay, everyone except Naruto. He couldn't sit still and quiet if his life depended on it, and often caused class to take longer. A chuckle sounded in the back of his mind. Bringing his attention back to his new class, he watched as the teacher finally take charge and begin to herd the beasts to different seats. The teacher was an older man, thin as a stick, and looked like a gust of wind would sweep him off his feet. Indra was not impressed. Okay kids, listen up, the man sounded. I know some of you miss your parents, but I promise you will have a great time here. Let's get started by introducing ourselves to the class. My name is Mr. Gondal and I'll be your teacher for the school year. Walking up to a large whiteboard behind him, he wrote his name in large lettering. Not many of you may be able to read yet, but here's my name written out. Now it's your turn to introduce yourselves, starting from the front. Indra droned the teacher out. He could care less about the names of these children. All that mattered to him was finishing school as quickly and efficiently as possible. The faster he skipped grades, the faster he could be done with this. Sure, there's merit in learning about all the technological advances in this world as well as its history, but anything advanced is adult exclusive. A shinobi without information is a dead one. Indra, Mr. Gondal drawled. Would you please step up to the front of the class and introduce yourself? With a sigh, Indra backed out of his seat and walked up to the front, ignoring the giggles and whispers. Facing the students, he thought about what he wanted to say. Let's go about this Team 7 style. He may not care about the others, but he wanted to make an impression. My name is Indra Arakawa. I love tomatoes and my mother, and I hate how my father abandoned her. I have no interest telling you my hobbies. My dream for the future. Indra stopped midway. What did he want to accomplish? He went through the daily motions of everyday life, wishing to grow up faster, but he never considered what he wanted to do when he got there. But if he had one goal, one ambition, it was to learn about the world around me and find my father. To ask him why he left. It was silent for a moment. The children didn't know how to respond to heavier subjects, and the teacher was in shock. Shaken out of his stupor, Mr. Gondal smiled. Well said and very informative, Indra. I think you'll fit in well here. A week had passed since the start of school and Indra was starting to feel like he was being watched. His shinobi paranoia had been hitting full force since the moment he finished his first day. At first, he thought it was fangirls he was not happy to deal with then again. But he was beginning to see a difference between little girl goo-goo eyes and whatever else was on his tail. School had just ended and he was waiting outside the farm for his mom to come pick him up when a hand reached out and clasped his shoulder. Hi there, are you Indra Arakawa? The owner of the hand asked. Turning around, he looked up and nodded to the young lady who he assumed was one of the teachers. What do you want? Indra said, mind whirling. He didn't think he caused any trouble today. Was this about that one kid he called a baby for crying during nap time? They didn't really tell their parents, right? Or maybe it was the time he snuck out of class to visit the library? He'd worry about it later. The lady began to speak again. I want you to come with me. Your mother called to let us know she would be running late. Follow me and I'll show you where you can wait for her. The lady responded, smile ever present on her face. She held out her hand and Indra reluctantly took it. Something wasn't adding up. Ka-san's job ended a half hour before school ended, so she couldn't be running late. Regardless, he followed her back into the school, passing the front office on the way. Something's wrong. Students usually wait in the office if they need to be picked up. Why is she taking me to one of the back rooms? If it wasn't before, Indra's guard was definitely up now. The girl led him to a door, then stood behind him. No escape. Indra put up his best cover while preparing himself for whatever came next. Why are we here? Shouldn't we be at the front? What if Ka-san doesn't find me? He asked, putting his best impression of a 6-year-old he could muster. Instead of answering, the girl grabbed his arm, squeezing it in the process. A feral look crossed her face, almost snake-like. He would know too, as a former student of Orochimaru and contractor of Ryuchi Cave. Indra heard what sounded like a hiss before he felt his arm being yanked, and he was thrown into the dark classroom. Twisting midair, he attempted to land on his feet, but his pudgy small body betrayed him, and he fell with a snap. Shit, I'm so gonna train when I get out of this mess, he thought, clutching his broken finger. He had tried to save his fall but only hurt himself more instead. Shooting his head up, he witnessed her transform into something that could only be described as a monster with the torso of a woman with snakes for legs. Reminds me of Orochimaru's twisted experiments. It was troublesome to pose as a mortal, SSSS. It's worth it in the end since I get to feast on a young demigod like you. Your scent is strong for your age. It SSS delectable. The snake woman hissed. Demigod? Indra thought before dodging to the side as the snake struck out with one of her clawed hands. Fast. This is going to be a tough fight, and I don't even have a weapon. Scrambling to his feet, Indra darted his way across the empty room, knocking chairs behind him as he went. It bought him little time as she smashed through like it was nothing. Serpent tails slithering furiously towards him. Think, Indra, is there anything I can use to fight with? His eyes traveled across the room, before spotting a stapler on a table to his left. Reaching out to grab it, he barely noticed another claw swipe in his peripherals. Using speed beyond what should have been possible for a normal human child, he was just able to duck down. Wind swept over his hair and a bead of sweat trailed down Indra's temple. That was too close. As another claw found its way toward him, he nimbly leaned to the side, and watched as the appendage banged against the table with the stapler. Then, using all the strength he could muster, he took the stapler and smashed it against the monster's hand. Discolored blood and bone fragments splattered around and the table splintered. The monster screeched in pain as Indra jumped on the table in an attempt to send a flying kick to her face. It didn't work. The serpentine woman recovered and backhanded Indra with her good arm, knocking him off the table and onto the floor. It then upped its pace, grabbing Indra by the throat before he could catch his breath. Damn demigod. I won't settle with just eating you. I'll keep you alive and slowly rip you to pieces, she proclaimed, tightening her grip around his throat. Indra was beginning to lose consciousness, his sight speckled and darkening. No way I'm gonna die like this. Not after everything I've been through. I refuse to kneel. Indra felt an unknown power well up inside him. It was like a static shock to his system, traveling down his arms and into his hands, which are gripping the arm of the snake. His vision cleared and time nearly slowed. Everything was clear. It was as if he had the Sharingan again. Pure instinct to survive overtook him and sparks formed around his fingers. Like a switch had been clicked, Indra honed in on the feeling of static and the sparks expanded, encompassing his hands fully and burning the woman. Arg, stupid brat. I'll kill you! She screamed, her grip on his neck beginning to crush his throat. As the lightning intensified and traved through her system, Indra thought back to the first jutsu he learned from his mentor. The jutsu that served him throughout his years as a ninja. Chidori! Indra shouted. The cry of 1,000 birds echoed in the room, and the serpent's remaining hand was sliced off. With a yell, he kept his momentum and crisscrossed both hands. Lightning arced around him as he swiped both arms through either side of the snake's neck, preforming a brutal decapitation. Gold dust burst from the woman, causing Indra to shut his eyes for a brief moment. When he opened them, the lady was gone, leaving nothing behind except an empty room. Indra collapsed to his knees, panting hard as his body shook. I thought that was the end for me, he shuddered. It took a few minutes to calm himself down. When he did, he sighed in relief, thinking about what just happened while rubbing his bruised neck. What was that thing? It was like a woman and a snake were fused together. Why was she after me, and what's a demigod? The only demigods he knew of were from back in the elemental nations. He and Naruto fit the role to a dime, being the reincarnated sons of the Sage of Six Paths and Welders of Six Paths chakra. But this wasn't his old home, this was a completely new one that's relatively peaceful. Seems I've grown complacent, believing this world to be a safe place. Never again, he vowed. I will never be taken by surprise like that again. There's more to this world than what meets the eye. Standing up, he quietly walked to the door and left the room he had just battled to the death in. His first priority was to find his mom. He needed to make sure the only family he had was safe. Running down the halls without care, Indra made his way to the front entrance. Peeking around the corner, he saw his mother worriedly talking to the school principal. Another sigh escaped his lips and he wiped tears that were definitely not forming. His adrenaline was fading and he started to feel the pain and exertion he put his body through. This bruise will be a problem, he thinks, hand rubbing his neck again. An idea crossed his mind and he took his collared shirt and closed the top button and flipped the collar up. That's one problem down. Next was his finger. There was no way he could hide that, and it would take a long time to heal. I guess I'll need to get creative. Channeling his inner Naruto, he removed himself from his hiding space and ran to his mother. Ka-san! Ka-san, you're here! He jumped into his mother's open arms and proceeded to bawl his eyes out. Heia's worried face disappeared when she saw her son appear before regressing back. Sweetheart, what's wrong? Why are you crying? Are you hurt somewhere? Indra looked up with his big teary eyes and puffy cheeks and nodded. Lifting his finger, he showed her the damage. A gasp was heard from both her and the principal. I went back inside because I couldn't find my favorite marker, but I fell and broke my finger. It hurts, he cried out. His mother enveloped him in another hug. Sure, it's gonna be okay. We're gonna go to the doctor and get you patched up, okay? She asked. Indra nodded before he was lifted up into his mother's arms and carried out the front door. Mission successful, Indra cheered in his mind. When this was all sorted out, he had 3 things to do. 1. Find a way to his neck for the foreseeable future. Maybe ask to buy turtlenecks? 2. He needed to join martial arts. Sure, he was extremely skilled and unmatched as Sasuke Uchiha, but he isn't familiar enough with his new body yet. 3. Find out what that creature is and why he was called a demigod. Extra, Indra's library adventure. Indra was dying from boredom. If class wanted boring enough, then nap time was worse. He had already snapped at some brat named Daniel for crying yesterday, and he was not going to just sit there an hour doing nothing. So, naturally, he devised a plan of escape. His first objective was to find a corner hidden from Mr. Gondal's perch and place his mat there. Sneaking a peek at those around him, he silently got up and put his stuff out of view. Step 1 complete. The next objective was to somehow sneak across the room without waking anyone or catching the teacher's attention and leave through the classroom door. In a display of incredible dexterity and ability, he pounced around like a cat and neared the door before stopping to check his surroundings. Good, no one noticed his presence, even the fangirls who somehow always found a way to hunt him down and surround him. Now all that was left was to distract the teacher and slip outside, and he would be at home base. Lucky for him, a small collection of children's books were shelved near him. Grabbing one, he checked his aim before he slid it across the room and hit a box near Mr. Gondal. A thump was heard and he turned his head to the side, just missing Indra sneak out of the room. A smile graced Indra's lips. Still got it, HN, he thought. The next part was smooth walking as he made his way to the library, past the library, and into the history section. He had found an interest in this world's past conflicts, and how they compared to the elemental nations. Opening the front page of a book called World War II for Dummies, he began to read the first line. Then again. And again. Indra's mood plummeted to rock bottom. Why the hell are the letters floating? He yelled, making the sleeping librarian jump awake. Not wanting to get caught, he dropped a book and dashed out of the library and back to the classroom. He faced a new challenge in life. Reading. If everything he read had an unbreakable gen just over it, then perhaps skipping grades was going to take longer than estimated. Thanks for reading. Have a good day. The clashing of kunai rang out as dust and debris swirled and the warriors met in open combat, the force of their blows uprooting trees and any onlookers. It would look as if a massive whirlwind was hell-bent on destroying the earth itself. Sasuke Uchiha resided in the center of that destructive force, being both the cause and container for it. Panting with exertion, he raised his sword towards his opponent. Tell me, Uchiha Sasuke, the mysterious warrior mused. That's all you have to do, and I'll let you live. Not a single sign of fatigue was visible on the man's face. Instead of speaking, Sasuke responded with a charge. Lightning flared up around him, quickening his pace. He swiped his sword in a downward arc, once again attempting a killing blow. The warrior simply raised a hand, and an invisible barrier stopped the blade mid-swing. Sasuke leapt back, using Susanoo to block a barrage of invisible attacks that followed. Even with his Rinnegan eye, he could only see ripples of them. Despite his efforts, pain ripped through his leg as one broke through and fractured his shin. TCH. He was running low on chakra. At most he could create one more portal, and he wasn't sure if he would truly escape. The warrior had followed him through dimensions before this, and after each one the interval of when they arrived decreased. Regardless of whether or not he would truly escape, the shinobi world depended on the information he found. He had to get to Konoha before they attacked and found it. Stabbing his sword into the ground, he calmed his breath and waited. He only had one shot. Finally giving up, Uchiha? I had hoped you would put up a better fight. Now tell me where it is, inferior creature. Not waiting for a response, the pale warrior practically teleported in front of him. At the same moment, Sasuke channeled some of his remaining chakra into his sword and threw it. Tengaku no Shohiki, the warrior exclaimed, the invisible barrier once again surrounding him. The sword glanced of it, and to the right. Sasuke then held up his hand into the symbol for tiger, and activated his Rinnegan. A portal opened up at the foot of the sword out of sight of the warrior. Now this was going to be the hard part. Sasuke felt his chakra dip and a headache throbbed in his skull. His Rinnegan eye began to bleed as he did something that no Rinnegan user had done before. He used 3 Rinnegan jutsu at once, and momentarily disappeared. The warrior froze in shock. Blood leaking from his mouth. How? He asked. How did you bypass my barrier? It should be impossible. Sasuke fell to his knees in front of his portal, exhausted. Otsutsuki Raishiki. There is no such thing as a flawless jutsu. Every jutsu has a weakness. You became overconfident in your powers and it cost you. Never underestimate a shinobi. Sasuke answered, watching the life leave the alien's eyes before falling through the portal and out in front of Konoha's gate. I didn't think that would actually work. He had done the impossible. First, he had opened the portal to Konoha. Risky, but necessary. Next, when he threw his sword, he connected 2 chakra strings to it. One tied to a kunai in his sleeve and the other attached to the barrier. With the string connecting the 2 weapons, he used a Menotejikura in tandem with the Pertra path. Swapping places with his sword whilst using the string as a beacon, he absorbed the barrier through the string and using the kunai, he slit the throat of the Otsutsuki. Sighing with relief that his plan worked, he looked up and gasped. All around him was destruction. Shinobi and civilian alike lay slaughtered in the streets. Skyscrapers were torn to pieces and fire was everywhere, not even the Hokage rock was spared. Tears flowed from his eyes and he cried out a heart-wrenching scream. He failed. Konoha was gone. Indra woke with a start. Tears streaming from his face and his heart racing. He must have made some noise because not a moment later, his mother ran into the room. Sure, it's okay, Indra. Everything is alright. Did you have a nightmare again? Heya asked in her soothing voice. The effect was immediate, and he began to calm down. He was infinitely grateful to her ever since his rebirth. His first years were hell. He had just died, then was thrown into a body too small with no control over anything he did. On top of that, grief and regret plagued him. He was sure he disassociated until he was 4 when he finally began to open his heart again. Even that hurt, but it began to ease with time. He promised himself the day he said, "I love you" to his mom that he would do anything to repay her. Anything to protect her. There was fire and blood and he cut himself off. No point in finishing if he couldn't even talk properly. Ever since his fight with that serpent woman, he was getting near constant nightmares about his past life and barely got any restful sleep. The fighting must have been a trigger to his darker subconscious. It also didn't help that his brain was still developing, making him more prone to emotional outbursts. Oh dear! His mother exclaimed, that sounds scary. Was it because of the Halloween movie we watched last night? Indra nodded. He didn't want to burden her more than he already had. He would sound crazy if he told her he was having flashbacks from another life where he was a killer in a world full of others like him. Wiping the leftover tears from his eyes, he started a slow, methodical breathing exercise. It was something he had learned from Sakura. Apparently it had restorative medical effects. As a bonus, it even helped grow chakra stores. Not that he had chakra anymore. Ka-san, can I sleep with you tonight? He practically pleaded. It was embarrassing to be reduced to this state, but he needed an anchor. Last thing he needed was for PTSD to make him spiral again. If that's what you want. Need me to bring your pillow? Indra shook his head. He wasn't that helpless. His mother slowly rose from the bed and helped him out of his covers. It was a bit hard to see in the dark, but his eyes adjusted quickly. He pulled the pillow under his good hand. His finger healed fast in the past 3 weeks, and the doctors would take the splint off tomorrow. Before leaving the bed fully, he glanced at his nightstand and checked the time on the clock that resided there. 2:26 a.m. Seems like it already is tomorrow. Once that thing was off, he could finally start training himself. Turning away, he caught his mother's outstretched hand and followed her to her bedroom like a small duckling. He fell asleep in a warm embrace. No more nightmares came. The sun peeked through the window onto the sleeping boy. Morning had arrived and birds were chirping outside the window. Indra opened his eyes only to shut them again. The sun was blinding. Turning the other way, he was still for a moment. Until he burst out of the covers. By the position of the sun, it was 9:30. He had slept in late. It was a good thing it was Saturday and school was out. Rubbing the sleep out of his eyes, he trudged out of the bedroom. His feet took him to the living room where he heard the sound of the television. Their house wasn't anything special, but it was bigger than most 2-bedroom homes. Their living room, for instance, was larger than a two-car garage. On the opposite side of the door wall was the TV. It sat snugly on a large TV stand cabinet mix where they stored all sorts of things like board games, blankets, and movies. Across from the television was his mom resting on their three-piece couch. Just like always, his mother turned and smiled at him. She always noticed him nearby, similar to a ninja sensor except exclusively trained to recognize when he was close. Indra returned the smile and sat down across from her. Getting comfortable, he reached over the side of the couch, clasping the metal lever and extending the leg cushions and leaning back the seat. He then turned his attention to the screen. It was a local news station his mother often played in the morning. She would say it's important to be prepared in case a thunderstorm appeared. He never understood why. The humans on this planet had long since created devices to track storms and bad weather. From what he saw, it was going to get cloudy in the afternoon. It could be worse, it could be rainy. Indra always felt tense on those days, like the sky was in a bad mood. Zoning out, he thought back to the previous night. His nightmares were becoming more and more of an issue. He needed to work past it, and fast if he wanted enough energy to go through with the training he had planned. He also needed the energy to grow faster. He was not going to condemn himself to the life of a shrimp. Another thing to note. Indra still hasn't figured out a workaround to reading. It took intense concentration to read a child's fairy tale, and often ended in a throbbing headache. His only solution he could think of is to ask his mom to give him a book in full Japanese and learn the language. Indra discovered Japanese during a visit to a grocery store when he was 5. He had been surprised and hopeful once he realized it was fairly similar to his native language in the elemental nations. If that was ineffective, better to not think about it. Indra, his mom spoke, "Why don't you head to your room and pick out some fresh clothes? Your doctor's appointment is in an hour. I bet you're excited to get that splint off." Startled out of his thoughts, Indra nodded and ran off to his room. He was glad to have something to distract him. No need to get depressed this early in the day. Reaching into his closet, he grabbed a dark blue high-collared shirt and a pair of black shorts. It wasn't necessary to cover his neck anymore since the bruising healed, but he wore it anyways. It was a reminder for his old clan and his last life. Uchiha were often seen wearing high-collared shirts, and he was no better. He wore them for most of his life, only changing his fashion choice a few years after the war. Once he finished picking an outfit, Indra proceeded to get himself ready for the day. He stripped his clothes, throwing them into a laundry basket, and stepped into the shower. Showering was always nice, it helped him clear his head. When he was done, he dried himself off and got dressed before brushing his teeth and walking out into the kitchen. "Hi, Ka-san. Cereal today?" Indra asked. He sat down, noting that a bowl was laid out for him and the milk was on the table. "Yup, nothing fancy," Heya replied. A quick glance at her son and she squealed in delight. "Look at you, all dressed and handsome. What's the occasion?" she teased. Indra huffed. She had been doing that ever since they went shopping and bought him new shirts following the incident at school. Apparently, the collars accentuated his good looks and round cheeks. At least according to his mom and teachers. "I'm just teasing. Once you're done eating, we'll drive to the doctor's and get you back up to 100%. Since I have no work today, is there anything you wanted to do special?" Indra thought about it. This would be the perfect time to ask about reading and martial arts. Finishing the bite of cereal he had been chewing, he quickly swallowed and proceeded to propose his ideas. "Mom, can I learn Japanese? I know you said you would teach me in a few years, but it's impossible to read English. The letters never cooperate." Heya chuckled. "Of course you pass up going to a park or out to eat to study. Always trying to learn something new, aren't you?" Indra was always fascinated by everything and anything created by this world that wasn't present in his old one. It was also saddening though. The elemental nations only began to seriously develop after peace was made between the 5 nations. He wondered if they would have been to the stars if shinobi never existed to keep them focused on the ground. "Tell you what, I'll teach you 2 languages. Japanese and Greek," his mother continued. "Why Greek?" Indra asked. It wasn't a popular language and is rarely, if ever, spoken in the United States. His mother chuckled before a melancholic look crossed her face. "Your father was Greek. Over the time we spent together he taught me a bit. After you were born and he left," his mother paused, sadness evident in her eyes. "I spent a few years learning it. I even practiced it by talking to you when you were a toddler." A smile returned to her features. Indra was shocked at the revelation. Not the part about his father being Greek, but that he had no memory of his mother speaking a different language to him. He had a near-perfect memory. There's no way he forgot his mom speaking a whole different weight. Theta Upsilon Mu Mu Alpha Iota Tau Alpha. Pi nu tau alpha mu omega kappa alpha al lambda alpha beta alpha. Indra muttered. A whole new slew of questions barraged his mind. Why could he understand Greek? He never learned it, too focused on English. Not only that, he could speak it too, as if he had only temporarily forgotten. Could this have something to do with what that monster called him? A demigod? He sighed. Another task was added to his already growing list. There was so much he needed to know, and his mind wouldn't allow him to wait. Indra. His head shot up. Yes, Ka-san? He must have tuned her out. There was just so much to think about. You spaced out a bit, honey. Are you still tired from last night? She asked in a concerned tone. No, I was just thinking that I want to join martial arts too. That way I can protect you in case something bad happens. Indra quickly replied. He didn't want to forget and need to ask later. Let's get you to the doctor first. Then we'll consider taking a look. Heya countered. It was time to go anyways. Indra nodded. One thing at a time. Don't get ahead of yourself, he chastised. Done eating, they placed their dishes in the sink before putting on their shoes and heading out the door. Several hours later. After heading to the doctor's and getting his splint off, his mother took him around town and signed him up for judo and kickboxing. He needed to get stronger in case more of those creatures showed up. Martial arts gave him an excuse to get back into fighting shape. She also took him to a local bookstore. There, she bought some children's books in Japanese and Greek. He didn't think he had to start at such a low level, but he didn't put up a fuss. His interest was caught by what the Greek ones were about. They were stories about ancient Greek mythology. From the description on the back, they ranged from going over letters to short stories about gods, monsters, and more importantly, demigods. When he arrived home, he demanded to be taught Greek first. He feinted interest by saying it was because his father was Greek and he wanted to know more about him. In truth, he just wanted information about demigods. It may not be anything useful in the end, but it's the only lead he had. Which brings him to his current affair. Indra was having a blast. Learning the Greek alphabet, then putting them into words was going smoothly. For some reason, he had no trouble reading it. His natural intellect mixed with whatever gave him the ability to know Greek was letting him to get months' worth of work and comprehension done in less than a day. It was late in the afternoon now, and he has been completely focused on being taught. His mother, for some reason, never looked surprised at his understanding. It was as if she expected him to learn quickly. Not that he was complaining. It meant he got to read the stories they bought faster. Besides the alphabet book which he already went through, Indra also had a book series called Tales of the Odyssey. It was essentially a kid's edition about an ancient Greek epic about the hero Odysseus and his journey home after the Trojan War. He wouldn't consider himself much of a scholar, but there was so much he was learning by reading. He began taking notes in his head and categorizing things by importance. The 13 main Greek gods taking the top. He felt that there was something more to them than just old stories. He can credit that to his experience in the Fourth Shinobi War. The Sage of Six Paths and his mother, the rabbit goddess Kaguya, were treated as nothing but old stories and legends, but turned out to be true and the prologue to a much more disastrous conflict. Indra mulled over them in his head. First, there was the king of gods, Zeus. He always felt a spark in his chest when he read his name aloud. Along with Zeus were his siblings Poseidon, Hades, Hestia, Demeter, and the queen of gods Hera. They were the offspring of the Titan Kronos and the Titaness Rhea. 3 other gods took roles in the story. The 3 being the goddess of wisdom Athena, the god of the sun Helios, and the messenger's god Hermes. He wasn't a fan of them so far. They all reminded him of the alien, planet-leeching Otsutsuki clan. Arrogant, all-powerful, no restraint with their powers, and viewed humans as lesser beings. As worthless pawns. Along with gods, he also kept track of different people of note that Odysseus met on his journey. There stood Aeolus, keeper of the winds. He placed all the bad winds in a bag and gave them to Odysseus, who used them to blow him far from Ithaca when he was almost home. There was the 3rd-generation Titaness Calypso, a beautiful sea goddess who tried to make Odysseus her husband and held him captive for 9 years by bribing him with immortality. Apparently she was punished to live alone on the island Ogygia for helping the Titans. During his journey, Odysseus also met the monster Charybdis, who appears as a giant whirlpool that swallows ships. From the description alone, Indra estimated its size to be far greater than the tailed beasts. This Odysseus had rotten luck through and through. He faced creatures such as the Cyclops Polyphemus, the 6-headed monster Scylla, lotus eaters, and sirens. Sirens appeared as beautiful maidens and lured sailors with a bewitching song that left them vulnerable to be eaten. It reminded Indra of Tayuya from Orochimaru's Sound 4. She used music to place ninja into genjutsu. Closing the last book, Indra realized he still didn't know much about demigods apart from them being the offspring of a god and a human. Could that be what he was? If so, then what god was he the son of? He knew from his fight that he had some control over lightning, but that wasn't enough. There were multiple gods with electrokinesis abilities. He just hoped it wasn't Zeus. Indra was going to need more informative books, but from what little he was told, the man was as scummy as they came. Taking his mind off the Greeks, he let out a yawn and stretched his arms in his seat at the dining table. Despite not being as comfortable as a couch or his bed, the dining room chairs helped him keep focus. If he laid down now, he would likely pass out. "Dinner's ready, Indra," his mom called as she walked from the kitchen. Whatever they were eating, it smelled good. Standing up from his seat, he piled all his books and took them to his room. His bed frame had a shelved backboard with empty room. Placing his books there in order, he walked to the bathroom and washed his hands. Looking up, he observed himself in the mirror. His features largely resembled those of his old life. The one feature that stood out to this day to him were his eyes. Gone were the familiar black irises, and in their place was a bright stormy blue. If he looked hard enough, he imagined he saw little flickers like lightning in a storm. He was told he inherited them from his father, but all he ever saw was a flash of orange and blonde. He hoped Naruto was okay. The last time he saw him was on dire terms. Regardless, Team 7 would always be a part of him. Tomorrow, he thought, tomorrow I will find out more about my power. He wasn't worried about his mom finding out. She had a work meeting tomorrow, and he would be home alone with only a babysitter to keep an eye on him. I'll just drug her to sleep, that way he could freely do what he wanted and no one would get hurt. The next day, Indra was outside in his backyard, trying to repeat the sensation of static running through his veins. His babysitter was happily sleeping inside on the couch, unaware of the world around her. It was another sunny day. The clouds had moved on and broke up in the night. It was also the first time in a while he didn't have a nightmare. Instead, his dreams were little snippets of things he couldn't make out. But it filled the events of a conflict of some sorts. It's probably because he spent so long reading yesterday. His imagination was acting up. Indra closed his eyes, wind brushing through his hair as he stood still. He decided to start by creating electricity again, since he knew he could do it. He could also factor in that he spent an entire life as a master of lightning release. A spark ignited inside him, and without warning, he held his arm out. He felt a tug as a jolt of lightning arced down his arm past his outstretched hand and out in a bolt-like form. It flew out at blinding speeds, causing a boom to be heard as it impacted with the ground a few meters away from him. Indra's eyes opened, and he was surprised at what he saw. The point of impact was scorched, a meter-wide crater in the ground. Smoke rose from the earth and drifted off in the wind. "Shit, this is going to be a pain to cover up," Indra complained in his mind. As he walked closer to inspect it more, he accidentally shot forward. He flew through the air and impacted on the ground. Hard. "What the hell?" Indra exclaimed. It felt as if the wind picked him up and threw him forward. "Do I have power over wind too?" he questioned. He sat up, brushing the dirt off his legs. He refocused on the feeling of electricity and tried to imagine wind instead. During his time traveling the elemental nations for redemption, he picked up the basics of all 5 chakra natures and even imitation Keki Eigenkai like ice release. But he had the unfortunate privilege of getting personally tutored in wind transformation by Naruto. It was a headache that he never wants to experience again. Also, though he would never admit it, Naruto made a pretty good teacher. The Dobe learned a lot after he spent a few years instructing academy students in Konoha. The annoying voice of the Dobe, "Come on team, it's not that hard. Just try to make the chakra grind against itself. Kinda like a blade." Indra scowled, but he did it anyways. It was easier to activate that he thought. It was like the air was an extension of his limbs. It twisted around him as he redirected the flow. Snapping his wrist down, a long cut appeared on the earth next to him. Not that hard at all, Naruto," he thought as he smirked. Taking it a step further, he started manipulating the wind around him and expanding the radius. It was like a miniature tornado was swallowing him up. "Let's try weaponizing it," Indra decided in high spirits. He ignited the spark inside him and electric began to show up in the wind around him. Everything was going well. He never felt more alive until this moment. It was different from chakra. He didn't need to think and form seals to manipulate it. He simply willed the wind and lightning to do as he pleased. Suddenly, the winds and lightning cut off. Indra fell to his hands and knees, panting hard. It had taken more out of him than he thought. "I'll practice more later." Dragging his feet into the house, he just made it to his bed before passing out. When Indra woke up, his babysitter had already left. He does feel a little bad about drugging her, but it needed to happen. He left his room and found a gift on the kitchen table. His mother returned home while he was asleep. Turns out she bought him some more books in Greek, and not at the kid level. The perks of being considered a genius prodigy were at full effect. What he received was a copy of the Iliad and another book called A Guide to Greek Mythology. Which did he read first? The obvious choice was the guide. He had an idea on who his father most likely was, and where his powers came from, and he didn't like it. Opening the book, he went to the table of contents, and to the section about the Greek gods and goddesses. He went straight to the king of gods, Zeus, and read his description. Zeus is the Greek god of the sky, thunder, lightning, kingship, honor, and justice. He is the king of Olympus, the youngest son of the titan Kronos and Rhea, and the husband of the goddess Hera. He already knew that part. He searched further and found a paragraph that made his blood run cold. The demigods' sons and daughters of Zeus, such as Hercules, are often described to have inherited the following abilities: extreme strength, see Hercules page 213, and lesser control over their father's domains. That settled it. Indra couldn't deny to or think of another answer. He was as that monster, a Scythian Dracena said, a demigod. He was the offspring of his Japanese mortal mother and Zeus, king of the gods. The revelation made him clench his fists. And he felt something begin to burn inside him. It was something he only felt twice before and never wanted to experience again. A roaring fury, an inferno of hatred. The father he never knew. The father that left his mother and never returned. That father was one of those arrogant, all-powerful beings with no restraint with their powers. He was also a cold-blooded murderer and a rapist. It looks like my goals have changed. Learning about the mortal world can wait. Indra's new ambition was to grow in his powers and hunt down these gods. He didn't know what he wanted when he saw him. But it for sure wasn't to ask why he left his mother, he was going to ask why he existed in the first place. 2 years later. In the 2 years since Indra learned about his heritage and the origins of his powers, not much had changed. There were no monster attacks or anything supernatural occurring. He spent most of his time either working on his powers or continuing to learn Japanese and Greek while reading more about Greek mythology. In the time he couldn't do either, he was spending his time at school. Speaking of school, Indra is proud to say that after some intense concentration in English classes, Indra was able to skip 3 years and jump straight to 5th grade by the time he would have started the 2nd. He was happy to not be stuck with fangirls anymore besides when he passed them in the halls. But in return, he had a bunch of 10-year-olds doting on him and treating him like a baby, even the teachers got in on it. It was arguably worse than in the academy back in Konoha. At least there he was mostly left on his own. Outside of school, he was progressing slower than he liked, especially physically. He understood he wasn't even 8, but he needed to get stronger as fast as he could. Martial arts was a good way to strengthen himself, but it was too soft. The fights were never enough to keep him on his toes or feel danger. The instructors would always praise him as a genius because he learned everything so quickly. He was a yellow belt in judo and is on his way to be the youngest black belt in the country for it. In kickboxing, he was already a black belt and working to move up the ranks. Though, to Indra, the moves weren't anything fancy. His personal fighting style was much more complex. To push himself more, he was working to mix the moves of judo and kickboxing along with some of his own to create a new style that his small body could take advantage of and not be suspicious. Without chakra, his old style would be severely restricted. That, and it was geared towards killing blows, which isn't acceptable in modern times. As he was working more physically, however, he began to notice that his body was different from others his age. He was stronger, faster, and had more stamina than others. He chalked it up to him being a demigod, but there was room to investigate. Also of note, his vision and healing was superhuman as well. If he focused hard enough, it felt like he had the Sharingan. The hand-shaped bruise on his neck from his fight with the monster healed in a week, and his broken finger in less than a month. Small cuts and scrapes would only last a few hours before disappearing. It was like a lesser version of Naruto's insane regenerative abilities. Besides his achievements academically and physically, his powers have grown in strength as well. Since his initial practice, where he exhausted himself after a few minutes, Indra spent more time practicing control and endurance over brute force. Every time he was alone, he would create funnels and currents of air and shape them into whatever he imagined. He had managed to recreate multiple wind-style jutsu and even surpass them. With lightning, he was working to regain his control over the element, as he did in his past life. He found that it was easy to create but more difficult to shape. It kept wanting to form bolts. He blamed his father for that. Indra was currently at school and planning his days ahead of him. It was difficult to focus in class when he already knew everything being taught. He wished he could just graduate elementary school already. The district allowed him to jump to the final elementary grade but wouldn't let him go higher. They argued that it wasn't healthy for a kid his age to be put under too much pressure and be disconnected from his peers. Perhaps he could work on lightening some more, there's a thought. He had an idea on a new move he could develop. Great, now he made the school day more unbearable in anticipation. Luckily the school day was almost over. Indra, the teacher called. Can you answer this question on the board? Shaken from his thoughts, Indra focused and looked up at the board. Written with a black expo marker was an equation. It was a simple problem, dividing fractions. With a sigh, Indra pushed back his seat and walked up to the front of the class. The teacher handed him a marker and he wrote down the answer in record time. That's correct, Indra. You even wrote down how you solved it, well done. The teacher complimented. Indra is just so cute up there. Someone whispered. I know, right? He's so smart too. I could have done it too if I was called up there. He's not that special. Shut up, Richard. Okay, kids, quiet down. That was the final lesson of the day. Now I'll go over your homework that's due tomorrow. And remember, no late work. The teacher spoke as Indra returned to his desk. Cries of protest sounded in the room. No one liked homework. Indra tuned him out. He already knew this stuff, so he would just finish the homework when he got it. No point in waiting when he could finish it in at most 5 minutes. School ended about 10 minutes later and everyone was gathering their things into their backpacks. Chatter filled the air and people began to leave one by one. Indra had finished his homework a few minutes ago and was already ready to leave. As he went to leave the classroom, a hand found its way to his shoulder. Looking back, Indra met face to face with another student from his class. It was Richard from earlier. Class clown and the only person who actively talks to him other than teachers and love-struck girls. Hey Indra, I know I said that I could solve the problems earlier, but in truth these fractions things just aren't clicking. So, what I'm trying to say is, could I copy your homework? Richard finished a touch embarrassed. Even if they got along, it was still a blow to his pride to ask someone 2 years younger for homework answers. I'm busy today, ask someone else. Indra says in a monotonous tone. He didn't have time to help children, he had better things to do. He went to pass Richard but he was blocked by an arm. Please, I'll be so fast that you won't have time to blink. Richard pleaded. Indra let out a sigh. Most of the class had left already, and he wouldn't get anywhere without indulging him. Fine. Thank you. But I'm not letting you copy it. I'll write down how to solve them, but the rest is up to you. You won't have anyone to help you when you're older, so get used to it. Indra interrupted. In less than a minute he somehow explained how to solve multiplying and diving fractions and was out the room. He was still young, so he could get away with running in the hallways. He didn't have a second to spare. Slowing his pace, he walked out the front door and saw his mom's car in the front parking lot. Looking both ways across the parent pickup street, he ran in between cars to his. Since he was already late, he opened the door and hopped in. Placing his backpack beside him in the back seat of their car, he placed his seatbelt on so they could go. Someone's in a hurry today. His mom chuckled. Indra huffed and turned on the radio. If this were back in his old world, he would have surely put on the news. Any information on other nations and even his own was valuable. Here, though, it was meaningless. There were supposedly monsters, gods, and other mythical beings roaming around the earth. Plights of normal people didn't interest him too much anymore. Though he did keep track of major events, important people and companies though. Such as Dare Enterprises, recently their company value has skyrocketed, meaning they have more influence in the business world. Are you excited for tonight? His mother asked as she glanced at him while driving. Indra looked at her confused. Was there something important today that he forgot about? He didn't usually forget things. The lack of response caused his mom to laugh. Did you forget, silly? It's your birthday, she exclaimed. Indra's eyes widened. He had been too concerned about other things he hadn't paid attention to the date. It was the 2nd of September, 2001. Exactly 8 years after his rebirth. What are we gonna do? Indra asked, evading her question. I was thinking, since it's your birthday and all, we could visit to that military museum you've been wanting to go to, his mother replied. Indra's interest was piqued. He had seen an advertisement of it on the television and wanted to check it out. He may have lost interest in some of the more mortal things of the world, but the wars and weapons technology were fascinating. These people never had chakra but have created weapons that have more firepower than in Jounin-level ninja. Then there was nuclear weapons. They cause damage on a scale comparable to a tailed beast, except they have the added effect of leaving the land poisoned with radiation. He was eager to see some of these weapons close up. It was one thing to read about these things, but you have to see it yourself to truly understand. Plus, he needs to investigate whether the gods have anything to do with the wars. Minutes later, they arrived at their house and parked in the driveway. It was a hot sunny day out with a slight breeze carrying a trace of fall's chill. Indra and his mother walked together and into their house. He stretched his neck as he set his backpack on the floor near the door. About a half hour later, after his mother had changed from work clothes into casual wear, and they had a snack, they left again for the museum. The museum was an interesting place. Even just on their way to get a parking spot, there was a large field filled with World War II tanks, artillery, and even a few planes scattered around. It was an interesting sight to see. Before his death in the elemental nations, Sasuke had seen some of the advances of technology seen in this world begin to make headway, but it was a different process. Humans here didn't have chakra to control, power machines, or save themselves if something disastrous happened during tests. They only had their own hands to work with. Walking into the museum was an experience as well. Besides a front desk, the museum was designed in the shape of an upside-down T. To the left, there was a large room filled with items from the Civil War. To the right, the room was filled with miniature figures and buildings that recreated old war zones or forts. Straight back beyond the desk on either side stood large open doorways that led to the largest section of the museum, World Wars. Over the next hour, he spent his time reading anything and everything that caught his interest. There were so many stories about the past and information about past wars. Not long after he finished reading about Pearl Harbor, an old man came up to him. "Enjoying the museum, son?" "HN," he so eloquently replied. "If you have any questions, you can ask me. I actually served on one of the carriers during World War II. The USS Enterprise. A beauty, that one," the old sailor told him. Indra raised an eyebrow in surprise. Back in the elemental nations, most war veterans didn't live to see 40. Seeing someone that lived out their life after one in peace was a welcome change. "Tell me about it." After spending a few too many hours at the museum and eating out for dinner, they finally returned home. It was nighttime and the sun was letting out its last traces of light on the horizon. Indra was tired from all the activity throughout the day. When he was a shinobi, he was expected to stay up for multiple days at a time if needed, but now that he was a child again, it would be detrimental to his growth if he didn't listen to his body's needs. Saying goodnight to his mother, he pushed his teeth and changed into a pair of dark blue and black pajamas and got into bed. Indra's mind was sorting through everything he had learnt at the museum. The brutality of this world surprised him. The peace that was created here was formed on a mountain of corpses numbering in the millions. He wondered if a similar conflict on this scale would have happened in the elemental nations if Naruto wasn't there to stop him and keep peace throughout the world. He also had some new ideas for utilizing his powers in a combat situation. The most prominent on his mind being an attack similar to armor-piercing bullets. The idea was simple, but it would require a great amount of control to pull off. To create it, he would first have to make bullet-sized projections made out of condensed wind with a point. Easy enough, but that's the easiest it would get. The next step would be to make it hollow and fill the inside with a small bolt of condensed electricity. Then, if fired effectively, then it would not only pierce through an object or opponent, but if he willed it, he could dissipate the air while the projectile is in something and release the condensed electricity, causing an explosion that would be amplified by the scattering winds. As Indra pondered more over the training necessary to pull the move off, he drifted off into a deep sleep. Nearby. It was an hour past midnight and the moon was a full, casting its glow onto the pavement. Around 20 deer or so are crossing a street near Indra's home. At least, that's what a normal person would see. The reality is quite different. Instead of deer, stood 20 horrendous monsters, all searching for their single and most prized delicacy, demigod. This better be worth it. It will be. The power of this godling, it must be a child of one of the elder gods. The Scythian Dracena that Indra had killed 2 years ago had returned with a vengeance. The difference this time is that it also brought other monsters to hunt. Dracena, hellhounds, and even 2 Lastragonian giants were there. The monsters became silent as they neared Indra's house. While confident that they could defeat the young demigod, no monster wanted to die and reform in Tartarus. Surrounding the quiet home, the hellhounds began to sniff. Under normal circumstances, any monster within a 5-mile radius would easily be able to sense Indra due to him knowing about the gods and his power, but for some reason unknown to the monsters it was incredibly hard to sense him. It wasn't impossible, but it was like trying to find a newborn demigod of a minor god in a crowd of mortals. The scent was almost non-existent. One of the hellhounds let out a small yip, notifying the others that it found the location of Indra. Their plan was to use the Lastragonian giants to break the wall where Indra was sleeping and pour in while others surrounded the building in case he tried to escape. The giants neared the wall, and everything was silent. Both giants bent their knees and got into a stance similar to a football player, and barreled towards the house. With a loud crash, the walls caved in and dust rose up in the dark room. With Indra. Indra was dreaming. It was a peaceful scenery. He was Sasuke again, sitting atop the Hokage monument looking down upon Konohagakure village. The wind was lazy and relaxing while the sun was soaking into his dark clothing, keeping him warm. He took a deep breath of the fresh spring air. The air shifted to his left, and Naruto appeared next to him. So this is where you were, Sasuke? Looks like the peace was gone. Are you ignoring me, team? Shouted Dobe. Looks like he wasn't getting out of this one. You know, Sasuke, since you're here and all, you should visit Sakura-chan. You know she misses you. You've been gone for a few years now. He knew that already. After his travels with her and the birth of his daughter, he hadn't seen her since. His mission to search Kagaya's dimensions along with S-rank missions had kept him away from the village. Not that he had tried to go back much either. If he didn't lose track of time, Sarada should be 5 now. That was 2 years of his daughter's life he missed. You become a jounin yet? Sasuke asked, changing the subject. Naruto's face turned into a frown. Looks like the distraction worked. No. You know at this rate you'll never become Hokage. I don't want to hear that from you. You don't even qualify as a genin Tibeo. Naruto fumed. Better than having a reputation as the eternal genin, Sasuke shot back, a smirk on his lips. Naruto abruptly stood up and marched over in front of him. Before Sasuke could hear a response, the scene shifted. Now he was in the Konoha Academy, in front of a bunch of young children with Iruka at his side. Sasuke had been dragged into a competition with Naruto on who could eat the most ramen. Unfortunately for him, he lost. His loss meant he also lost the bet that he made beforehand and had to teach a lesson at the academy. Right now, Sasuke wanted to be anywhere but there. On the bright side, if there was one, was that the class he would be teaching was shuriken throwing. Naruto argued that since he was an Uchiha and was the supreme uncool master at it because of his knowledge in Uchiha-style shuriken jutsu, he needed to teach it. Time passed in an instant, and it was already end of the lesson. He had somehow gotten most of the fledgling shinobi to how a kunai and shuriken right and throw it in the proper stance. Sasuke let out a sigh of relief. He was never going to have a ramen-eating bet with Naruto again after this. As he was brooding, a brilliant idea crossed his mind. While he had to leave Konoha again tomorrow morning, the next time he was in the village for an extended period he would challenge Naruto to a tomato-eating contest. That was a much better idea than ramen will ever be. Thank you so much for your time, Sasuke. You somehow managed to teach my students something that would have taken me a week and a few hours. I'm impressed. Iruka complimented, walking to his side. He could visibly see the tension release from his shoulders. Teaching superhuman children for over a decade seemed to have taken a toll on the aging man. If you need it, I could give you a scroll on some shuriken techniques for you to teach them. Nothing too advanced, just some that were often taught to Uchiha youth. Sasuke replied. He watched as the children left the field and back into the classroom. Iruka had a look of shock on his face. Are you sure, Sasuke? They're clan techniques. They were collecting dust anyways. Ending the conversation, Sasuke prepared the body flicker technique to leave, but a hand caught on his cloak. Looking to the source of the disturbance, Sasuke saw a peculiar sight. It was a girl, but not an academy student. She was about 14ish, maybe 15, with electric blue eyes, spiked hair, and goth-style clothing. Did you need something? Sasuke asks. Wake up, she says in a monotone voice. What? He asks, getting more confused by the second. What did she mean, wake up? Indra, you need to wake up now. Indra startled awake with a gasp. He looks to the window just in time to see a large being charge at it. Instincts taking over, and he swiftly leaps out of bed and against the wall next to the door, and rolls to the left as a large piece of wood rushes past where his head was. Drywall and dust swirled around the room like an explosion, lowering his visibility and making it harder to breathe. Not even a second later, a second crash is heard parallel to the last one as another massive being barges through the wall. Indra catches a glimpse of what seems to be a giant human, at least 8 feet tall, smash his bed with its fist, before running out of his room. He needed to see if his mother was all right. Darting down the hall towards his mother's room as fast as his legs can take him, he stops just as her bedroom door opens. Heya looks down at him, panic in her eyes. Her hair messily knotted up on her shoulders. Indra, are all right? What was that noise? She frantically asks, kneeling down to his level and placing her hands on his shoulders. Monsters, is all he replies. He didn't have time to worry about whether she knew what they were, if she believed him, or how he knew what they were. Her safety was his top priority. There was no chance in hell he was losing his family again. Heia's eyes grew wide and a soft gasp left her lips. Quickly rising up as she heard another crash down the hall, she dragged Indra into her room and locked the door. "Ka-san, we have to leave, now," Indra pressured. "Not without my necklace. It's important," she replied as she snatched it off her bedside table and settled it around her neck. What was the point of a necklace when they were being attacked by monsters? Curious, but also in a hurry, he looked at it as she was finishing putting it on. The necklace had a gold and black twisted thread with sea foam-colored beads and 2 faded purple magatamas situated between them. It was obviously missing several pieces and looked ancient to the eye. "Now we can leave." Indra was going to respond, but a bang sounded against the bedroom door. Both of them turned their heads to see a lanky scaled arm with hideous long nails splinter a hole through the door. Great, not only giants were after them but also Scythian Dracena. Indra thought sarcastically. They were at a disadvantage in the room. While it wasn't small per se, there still wasn't enough room for Indra to utilize the full extent of his powers. Raising his arms towards the door, palms facing forward, Indra concentrated and prepared to attack. His blue eyes became stormy and sparks lit up along his body and between his fingers. As the door finally broke down and the serpent's ugly face came into view, Indra fired off a bolt of lightning from his palms. The lightning flashed across the room, lighting it up in a blue glow before it made contact with the Dracena, vaporizing it instantly. Seeing that the doorway was clear, he ran to the entrance and looked to his right to see several more monsters flooding the hallway. Whipping his arm towards them in a slapping motion, a large gust of wind ripped through the hallway, tearing up floorboards and launching the monsters several yards back to the end of the hallway. Finally having a few seconds of breathing room, Indra turned back into the bedroom and saw that his mother had moved her bed to the side and was opening up what seemed to be a trapdoor. "Indra, hurry! Down here!" she shouted. Taking one look back to see that the monsters were getting up and one of the giants was closing in, he heeded his mother's words and started to head down the ladder that the trapdoor was hiding. Once he was down, he called for his mom to come down as well. Nodding, he was her close the trapdoor over her head and slide down the railing like a firefighter. "Ka-san, what is place?" Indra asked. Normal homes had a basement, or even a tornado or bomb shelter if they were older or paranoid, but never what looked to be a wide, long tunnel going well beyond their yard boundaries. The tunnel was lit with fluorescent bar lights that were hung on the ceiling every few feet. It was made by your father as an escape route in case something like a monster attack happened. His father? So Zeus made this. This was the first time Indra had actually heard about his father without an evasive answer. Despite never being a presence in their life, it seemed he still put some effort in caring for them. As they ran down the underground hallway, they heard a booming voice from behind them. "Found you, little demigod." The monsters had reached the tunnel down to them. Quickening their pace, for the next minute all Indra could hear was the sound of their breaths and feet tapping against the concrete floor. That, and the quaking footsteps following behind them. "The exit is just up ahead," Heia called out. Indra looked around, but all he saw was a dead end. "Where?" he questioned in a hurried tone. He wasn't confident about facing so many monsters. His powers felt muted the longer they were underground. Instead of answering, his mother felt around the concrete wall, searching for something. "Found it," she cheers quietly. Pressing a spot on the wall, a lightning bolt symbol appears where her hand was and glows. The wall crumbles into nothing and the dirt behind it rolls back and parts away, revealing the outside world. Reminds me of Orochimaru's hideouts, Indra thought. His mother grabbed his hand to bring him the rest of the way out. As they took their first steps, a growl was heard. Instinct took over and Indra pulled him mom back as the ground above them caved in, and one of the giants crashed down in front of them. Its ugly face marring a savage grin. With the sky visible and the full moon shedding its light on the earth, Indra could see multiple more monsters behind the giant. Scanning his surroundings, he made out 7 Dracena and what looked to be 2 massive black mastiff dogs with red eyes. Those must be hellhounds. Indra had read about them in the Greek books he studied but had never seen what they looked like in real life. He and his mom began backtracking into the tunnel behind them when a slithering noise echoed. The monsters that were following them in the tunnel caught up. Surrounded on both sides, Indra held his arms out in both directions as lighting arced off him. He sent 2 blasts of lighting from his hands at the giants on either side. Both let out a groan but were seemingly unharmed. "Damn it, they're tough." He was about to attack again when a familiar voice sounded from outside. "Looks like we meet again, demigod." It was the same Dracena he had fought when he was 6. "You gave me these hideous burns last time, it's time I return the favor," the snake woman hissed, gesturing to the burn marks that were scarring her neck. "Collapse the tunnel on them. You can have the body once he's dead," she commanded. Indra and Hea's eyes widened as both of the giants simultaneously began to pound their fists against the walls supporting the ground above them. The concrete began to crack and the ground shook. Less than a second passed, and the ceiling began caving in on them. Ka-san! Indra cried out. He felt powerless. Just like when his clan was massacred in his past life. Forced to witness the deaths of those close to him. As the concrete overhead cracked and fell, Hea reaches to the ground and scooped up a sharp rock. Bringing it up to her hand, she slices her palm open and grips her necklace. The serpent and her followers watched as the earth caved on their prize and buried them alive. She felt a rush of euphoria as she heard the boy cry out. This is what she envisioned as she crawled out of Tartarus. The monsters waited in anticipation as the dust settled. Those that were in the tunnel got out unharmed as they were outside the danger zone. One of the hellhounds jumped down to the collapsed area to sniff out the bodies. Its nose close to the ground, it stood on the center of the wreckage and froze. From beneath its paws, the ground began to shift, and a purple light shone from the cracks in the ground. It let out a startled yelp as the earth beneath it exploded up, creating a plume of dust to block the monster's line of sight. As the hellhound recovered, it looked up to see a massive purple ribcage. The dust billowing in the wind around it enhanced the purple, making it look ethereal. Before it could even react, a skeletal arm swept out of nowhere and picked up the hound, bringing it several feet in the air. A squelch was heard, and the hellhound let out a shriek as its bones were crushed and organs ruptured. The arm then swung the dead hellhound at a Dracena in the distance, instantly killing it. Both monsters disappeared in a cloud of gold dust. Susanoo? Indra was in a confused awe as he looked at the purple ribcage surround him and his mother. Turning his head to her, he saw that she was panting hard with blood leaking from her nostrils. She moved her pajama sleeve to her face and smeared the blood. She then looked down to Indra and grinned. I told you the necklace was important. Indra's mind was in turmoil. His mother's necklace somehow allowed her to wield the power of Susanoo without chakra. All the coincidences that were piling up were starting to come to him at once. Being reborn into a different world with power over lightning, given the name of his incarnation in the elemental nations, and now this. It was like everything was set up by fate for this to happen. Hea turned her attention back to the monsters and scowled. The power of Susanoo wasn't made to be used by a mortal. The strain on her body was immense. It was like someone was taking a hot knife and slicing every cell in her body at once. If she didn't have her son to protect, she would have fainted immediately. Indra, listen to me. I know you have questions, but right now isn't the time. We need to deal with these monsters first. I don't know when you learned about your powers, but I need you use them. Focus on the Dracena while I deal with these other bastards. Indra's eyes widened for a moment before nodding. She was right, not that she needed to tell him. He was more shocked that she swore. He'd never heard her say a bad word in his life. Ka-san, let me make something to help you, Indra called. Bringing his hand to touch the Susanoo ribcage, he concentrated on pouring his power into it. Hea watched as wind began to swirl around them, and lighting began to form in the hand of the Susanoo. The spark slowly expanded in size and strength until it held a massive bolt in its hand. The raw power held within it occasionally flashing out and scorching the ground. Indra pulled away from the ribcage and stumbled. If he was guessing right, he used more than half his power in that lightning bolt, and was using more to maintain its shape and form from a distance. It will only last a few minutes, but it will make fighting these monsters easier, he said between pants. Well, I'll be damned. You were right, Zeus, your child really did inherit your strength, she whispered to herself. Sensing that if they waited much longer they would lose, the monsters began to close on as the dust settled. I'm gonna attack now, promise me you won't get hurt, she said out loud. Only if you do the same, Indra quipped back. Smiling, Hea began to walk forward towards the giant that was closest. Leaving the protection of Susanoo, Indra called upon his power again, forming a Chidori lightning blade in each hand as he readied himself. As if cueing it as a sign to attack, all hell broke loose. Indra rushed ahead at superhuman speeds and slashed out with his hands, killing the monster in front of him. Two more closed in from his sides. He swiped at one, causing it to back up while he jumped on the other one, slicing its neck as he used it as a springboard, flipping through the air and stabbing the other through its chest from the back. As more and more neared, he fell into the flow of battle, weaving and dodging between scaled claws and killing when he had an opening. On his mother's side, another massacre was occurring. She killed both the giants with ease, using the lightning bolt as a spear. She stabbed the both of them in quick succession, causing them to explode from the sheer divine power that entered them. The remaining hellhound from the duo earlier had somehow summoned more hellhounds through its shadow as she was busy dealing with it. Every time they tried to attack her, the Susanoo blocked the attacks, and in some cases broke their teeth and claws. Even though Hea was invulnerable to attacks and could kill a hellhound in one blow, she was tiring faster than she could attack. Every moment caused the pain coursing through her body to increase. Her nose was dripping blood out of her body, and even her other orifices started to blood. Her eyes were getting blurry from the bloodly tears, and she could barely hear over the headache pounding on her skull. She gasped for air as another 2 hellhounds pounced at her. The force of the impact knocked her off her feet, and she fell onto her back. She recovered through sheer adrenaline and stabbed both the hellhounds gnawing on the Susanoo. Finally, having some room to breathe, she looked around to see that all the hellhounds were gone. With no monster near her, she looked towards Indra and watched as he cut down the last Dracena. She was about to deactivate Susanoo when she saw a hellhound appear out of nowhere and bounce at Indra from behind him. Horror crossed her face as she cried out, "Indra, behind you!" Indra turned just in time to duck under the mutt and roll out of the way. Shit, I couldn't even sense it through the wind. Where did it come from? He wondered to himself. He brought his arms up to summon more lightning when an intense feeling of vertigo overcame him. He stumbled to the ground. He had exhausted all his power on the last Dracena. He could do nothing but sit there and wait as the hellhound growled and ran at him. Trying to muster up any power that remained, he felt the lightning bolt he lent to his mother come flying toward him at a high velocity. He smirked, then jumped, twisting in the air so his body was parallel with the earth below, and watched in slow motion as the massive bolt passed below him. Sparks of lightning arced off it, connecting with the ground like one of those plasma ball lamps that you can buy at stores. Through the corner of his eye he saw the Susanoo his mother was using dissipate with its arm outstretched in a throwing motion. "Thanks, Ka-san." The massive blot impacted against the hound's chest and exploded with a massive shockwave, knocking Indra through the air towards his mom. He landed in her arms as she cushioned his fall. Both watched as the lightning expanded outward from the hound and created a massive crater over 20 feet in diameter. Both mother and son hugged each other as gold dust flowed around them in the wind, reflecting moonlight like a prism. "So, Ka-san, probably still not a good time, but would you tell me who Dad was? Who he really is?" Indra asked. He knew already, but he wanted confirmation. It was silent for a bit. He quietly listened to his mother's heartbeat as he waited, the rhythmic beating giving him comfort after the strenuous fight. "I was hoping to tell you when you were older, but it seems I was wrong to do so," his mother told him in a soft voice. "Indra Arakawa, you are a demigod. A child born from a mortal and a god. You are the son of Zeus, the king of Olympus." Thunder boomed in the sky as clouds gathered above them in a swirling storm of chaos. Above Indra's head, a glowing symbol appeared. They both peered up to see a lightning bolt, the symbol of Zeus. Olympus. The hall of the gods was in turmoil. Shouting filled the air and arguing filled the room. Those that didn't soon started as they appeared in the hall. All of the gods knew what just happened. What should never have happened. Zeus had just claimed a child. The creaking of doors opening caused the gods to quiet. They looked to the door and saw Hera, queen of the gods, standing there. A furious look on her face. The ground began to rumble, and the divine power leaking from her caused the whole of Olympus to feel her anger. Zeus. Extra, Richard and his grandparents. Richard had just returned home from school. After barely catching the bus because of Indra, he was excited to tell his grandparents about his new friend he made. He moved in with his grandparents, and his parents died in an accident. Since then, he always felt he was a burden to them. "Grandma! Grandpa! I'm home!" he yelled. He dropped his backpack and ran to the kitchen to get some food. As he opened the cupboard to get some fruit snacks, his grandma stopped him. "Rick, remember, no snacks until your homework is finished." Richard looked to his grandma with a megawatt smile. "Grandma, guess what?" Not waiting for an answer, he continued, "Remember the kid in my class I told you about? The one that skipped grades. Today he hung out with me and helped me with my homework, so I'm all finished already." His grandma gasped and smiled. "What a nice young man. You thanked him for helping you, right?" "Yeah, he even taught me how to do the parts one didn't understand." We should invite him over for some cookies. Would that be nice?" she queries. Richard nodded his head, not knowing that that would be the last time he saw Indra for many years. Olympus. Zeus. Hera's voice echoed throughout the chamber. The wrath of Hera was beginning to cause some of the nymphs and immortals on Olympus to faint and hide. Even the gods were beginning to sweat. They haven't felt Hera this furious since Zeus claimed his last child some years ago. Though if they were to compare the two incidents, this time would be considered far more severe. Though not for the reason they were expecting. Poseidon, surprisingly, was silent so far, but Hera made up for it by emitting enough power and rage for the both of them. They were almost certain Hades was the same. In a thunderous flash of lightning, Zeus teleported to the throne room. Shortly after, the other Olympians who weren't already present appeared as well. All 12 Olympian gods were sitting in their thrones, trying their hardest not to look at Hera as they waited for Zeus to explain himself. "Brother, what is the meaning of this? You dare to break your oath again?" Poseidon demands, breaking the tense silence. "An excellent question, Poseidon. Why doesn't my insufferable, lying, cheating man-whore of a husband explain why there was just a child claimed under his symbol?" Hera exclaimed, her eyes blazing with barely restrained rage. "Enough!" Zeus shouted. "Hera, you will not speak to me like that again, is this clear?" Thunder boomed outside, driving his point home. "Why you dash?" Hera started. "Father, you know the dangers of having a demigod child given the great prophecy. I'll need to revamp Olympus's defenses again," Athena chastised. She was not going to listen to another argument between Zeus and Hera. "Olympus will be fine. My son will not be responsible for our fall," Zeus replied. "How can you be so sure, brother? Chances are you've doomed us all," Poseidon reflected. "Olympus will not fall. That's enough." Zeus once again rose his tone. The other gods listening silently, not letting any emotion show on their faces. "Pa, let the little shit do his worst. I could use a good fight," Ares exclaimed. There was no way he would pass up fighting one of his father's spawn. It's been around 100 years since he last fought a demigod son of the sky. That brat had openly humiliated him by helping Hephaestus capture him when he was having some quality time with Aphrodite. Ares challenged him to a duel that ended with a near-dead demigod, and a punishment that he would rather not have happen again. But a little revenge wouldn't hurt. "If that is all, I will be leaving. Hera, we need to talk about that tone you used against me," Zeus said, and flashed both himself and Hera away in a bolt of lightning. Before any other gods could leave, Athena spoke. "Artemis, report to me if there's an increase in monster activity. I have a feeling something big is stirring." Artemis nodded and flashed away. "Apollo, have you seen anything in the future with your abilities?" Athena then asked, turning her head. "How many times do I have to tell you I can't see everything in the future? But I did have a vision not too long ago," Apollo replied. "What did you see?" Poseidon questioned. Most of the gods had forgotten he was still there, given that he was surprisingly subdued during the reveal of Zeus's claiming. Last time it took a week before Olympus and the world at large stopped having tremors. Apollo looked toward his with an unusually serious expression. "Not much, just a voice. But it's where it came from that worries me." "Just say it, Apollo, I have things to attend to," the sea god said. "Tartarus." The voice came from Tartarus, Apollo said in a hushed tone. Eyes widened and gasps could be heard. The room darkened and a cold feeling enveloped everyone. Poseidon and Athena's brows scrunched in thought. "Hermes, send a message to Hades to be vigilant," Poseidon commanded. Hermes nodded before flashing away. Meeting adjourned. Athena, Hephaestus, make sure Olympus is prepared should anything happen. With that, all the gods and goddesses disappeared, leaving the throne room empty save for a small girl in the center of the room tending to a hearth. "Be safe, Indra. I'll do my best to keep your mother safe," the small girl proclaimed, peering through the hearth at the image of a sleeping boy. Indra's eyes slowly opened to the dark hospital room he was resting in. As he rubbed his eyes, memories of the day before started to come back to him. Not long after Indra was claimed, police and firefighters arrived. One of their neighbors had apparently called when they saw the state of their house. Or, more accurately, what was left of it. It seemed that while they were running through their underground tunnel, the house had set on fire. Not only had they been attacked, bruised and battered, but they lost all of their belongings as well. When the police heard the explosion caused by Indra's lighting, they drove over there and found them. Luckily, they weren't questioned about what happened. Hea was more injured than Indra thought, and he passed out not long after paramedics put him and his mom onto stretchers. Afterwards, they were driven by ambulance to the hospital and spent the rest of the night and morning sleeping before Indra woke up. He and his mother were in a shared hospital room, so he had the unfortunate privilege of seeing his mother in her heavily injured state. She had casts on all of her limbs and was practically a mummy in bandages. IVs were connected to her arm and the rhythmic beating of the heart monitor sounded in the room. What he could see of her face was frightening. She had deep black eye bags under her eyes and her skin was paler than he had ever seen it before. She was reminiscent of zombie without her healthy coloring. Indra would never forget the scene he was seeing right now. A feeling of regret building in his chest. Once again, he wasn't strong enough from keeping his loved ones safe from harm. Once again, he was forced to sit and watch as they suffered when he should have been able to help them. What good was being a demigod with supernatural powers if these were the resulting consequences? Sitting up more, he looked around the room and found a button along his cot that called for a nurse to come. He needed to know if his mother would be all right. Not even a minute later, the door opened, and in came a nurse along with a doctor and a police officer. The nurse was the first to speak. "Hey sweetie, are you okay? Do you feel any pain anywhere?" she asked in a soothing voice. Faced with the question, Indra finally took it upon himself to examine his own health. There was no pain or injuries apart from some bruising and cuts which had yet to heal from his fight. "I'm fine," Indra replies cordially. "That's great to hear," the nurse said excitedly. Over the next few minutes she did a basic check over before quietly exiting the room. The room was quiet for a moment before the doctor, who was still in the room along with the officer, spoke. "It's nice to meet you, Indra. I'm Dr. Wilson, and I'll be the one looking after you and your mom for the foreseeable future. Now, Indra, I want you to bear with me for a bit while this nice officer here asks you a few questions. Normally we would wait and ask your parent first, but we'll get to that later. Dr. Wilson, Mr. X." At the pause, Indra got a sinking feeling in his stomach before refocusing and looking up at the officer. "Hey kiddo, I'll be asking a couple of questions and then I'll be out of your hair. Don't feel pressured, you don't have to answer any if you don't want to," says the officer. "You don't have to treat me like a kid, ask away," Indra said with a flat tone. He'd gotten used to being talked down to as a child, but given the recent events he was in a no-nonsense mood. The officer smiled. "Do you have any idea how the fire in your house started?" "Oh yeah, the fire." Indra vaguely recalls the paramedics mention a house fire when they brought him on the stretcher. The conclusion he came to was that either an electrical fire started when the monsters broke through their house, or they lit it on fire when they realized he and his mother had escaped. But since he didn't have a clear answer in response, he shook his head. The officer briefly wrote something down on a clipboard he had in hand before resuming his questioning. "All right, do you remember where you were going after you left your house?" Again, Indra had no answer. He couldn't exactly say he was being chased by mythological monsters and be taken seriously. "Alrighty, that's all the questions I have right now. Thank you for cooperating, buddy. I pray you and your mother make a full recovery," the officer finished before leaving the room. As the door clicked shut, Mr. Wilson looked at Indra with a serious expression. "I'm guessing you want to know how your mom is doing?" he said. Indra nodded his head. "Is she okay?" he asked. "Your mother isn't in danger. While she has many injuries, given a few months she is expected to recover enough to resume daily activities." "Will she wake up soon?" Dr. Wilson sighed before responding. "She's in a medically induced coma right now, so she won't wake up until we are assured nothing else will go wrong. You may not remember, but the field you and your mother were in after you escaped your house was once a Civil War munitions site. That's the place where they stored ammo and weapons. While you were walking, it seems your mother, given her injuries, triggered a buried landmine and the resulting explosion landed you here." "What?" Indra thought. That didn't make any sense. He fought there amongst over a dozen monsters and no bombs went off. The only thing that had near enough firepower was. So that's what they think happened. My lightning strike led them to believe we encountered an unlucky active bomb hidden under the topsoil. But that led him to another question. A lightning strike and a bomb have two very different impacts. He knows humanity on this world are advanced enough to tell the difference. It's as if something was blocking them from seeing the truth. "So what am I supposed to do until she wakes up?" Indra finally speaks after processing. "For now you'll be staying here. Click the button you touched before if you need anything. Food, drinks, a pillow. A nurse will come shortly after." With that, Dr. Wilson stood up and left the room, dimming the lights as he did so. Indra lied back down on the bed and shut his eyes. With his immediate questions out of the way, other things started to pop up in his mind. Namely, the Susanoo. Due to the ambush yesterday, he never got the chance to ask about it. How did his mom have the Susanoo? Does she know about the gods? Are there others with abilities from his own world? The thoughts rolled through his mind until well into the afternoon, until a pulsing light forced his eyes open. He looked across to the source and saw the most peculiar thing. The necklace from around his mother's necklace was emitting an orange light. Indra furrowed his brow and gently shifted out of bed and walked over. He curiously reached out to touch the necklace and found it emitted a pleasant warmth, like a warm breeze at the beach. As if in a trance, he took the Magatama necklace off his mother's neck and brought it around his own and clasping it together. All at once, the necklace stopped emitting light and Indra broke out of his trance-like state. He stared blankly at the necklace and wondered, when did I put this on? Just now, kid, a deep, gruff voice suddenly voiced out. Indra jumped in surprise and turned to scan his surroundings. Who said that? He called out. There was nobody Indra could see and he didn't hear anyone enter the room. I did. The voice sounded again and Indra drew upon his demigod powers and felt the vibrations in the air to see if there were any invisible foes in the room. Oh, clever one, aren't ya? Using aerokinesis to search your surroundings. Whoever's there, come out. Indra called again. This mysterious person was getting on his nerves. TCH, I'm getting on your nerves? Try having your body broken apart, and being forced to spend hundreds of years in an inanimate object. Finally, pinpointing the source of the voice, Indra looked down to the necklace hanging around his neck. Ah, looks like you found me. Took you long enough. Westerners are so clueless. The voice chastised. Who are you? What do you mean you are stuck in an object? Indra questioned. He stopped sensing his surroundings but kept his powers circulating in case he needed them. Ha! Finally getting to the important questions. Be amazed, mortal, you're speaking to the one who has played a pivotal part in your world's history. The great and mighty god Susanoo. Indra was speechless. This was the second time he began questioning his existence since he found out he was a demigod. In his old world, the Susanoo was referred as a god of destruction due to its power and size, but it wasn't an actual god. Now, his mother's necklace is not only speaking to him but also claiming to be Susanoo, the god from this world's Shinto religion. Pa, I ain't no myth. If it weren't for that damned Poseidon of yours, I'd still be ruling the waters of Japan. The voice, now dubbed Susanoo, stated. Explain, Indra said in a warning tone. This guy is somehow reading his thoughts, and it was getting on his nerves. Humph, you're no fun. Fine, whatever. Dreary kids. If you really want to know, then I would sit down, this will take a while. As Indra goes back to his bed, he still keeps his guard up in case something happens. Ahem. Susanoo starts. As I was saying before, I've been trapped in this damn necklace for centuries now. It all started back in the 40s. 1843 to be exact. The mortals of America were attempting to open trade with Japan and expand their influence over their government and religion. When things weren't working out well, that bastard Poseidon sent one of his demigod spawn to solve the issue, not yet knowing about the existence of me and the other Shinto gods quietly lording over Japan. Indra was thinking back to what he had read about the Shinto gods. They were mythological gods in Japan, with their height of worship being the 7th century CE. He recalls many of their gods being reminiscent of abilities back in the elemental nations. More precisely, the Uchiha clan, with his late brother possessing the Mangekyo abilities Amaterasu and Tsukuyomi. It seemed that their worlds had more in common than he last thought. Are there other pantheons in the world besides the Greek gods and Shinto? Indra asked after considering that his knowledge might be too limited. No clue, kid. I never bothered with all that crap. I was content ruling over the seas and Pipahem, admiring my lovely sister Amaterasu. Whatever Susanoo meant to say, Indra did not want to know. Moving on, that damned son of Poseidon came to Japan with his ships, ignored the people of Japan's wishes and threatened them to comply and open their ports. Of course, their ships being under my influence, I was pretty pissed this hooligan was out here using daddy's power to get what he wanted. So I made their stay as miserable as possible and they left, but not before that sea spawn declared he would return. Susanoo paused in his story to grumble about how rude a visitor can be, and that he should have thrown the guy overboard and have a shark to eat him. Hurry it up. It's almost time for the nurse to check in. Indra interrupted his rambling whilst looking up at the clock on the wall near the hospital room's door. So impatient. I swear you Greeks are the rudest bunch I ever had the displeasure of meeting. So on, a year later that same demigod comes barging back to Japan as rude as ever to finish what he started. I would have let him go if that was all he did, but the guy had the gall to take a piss next to a monument of my lovely and beautiful sister Amaterasu. Naturally, I had to get revenge for her. So I cursed the sea spawn so that every time he went near water he would fall ill and lose some of his lifespan. Susanoo finishes in a proud tone. I'm guessing this is the part where Poseidon comes in and turns you into a piece of jewelry? Indra says unamused. This god was getting more annoying the more he spoke. Unfortunately, over the next few years nothing happened and I lived content as I watched the people of Japan prosper. But when that sea spawn eventually died off, Poseidon found out the reason for his untimely death and was furious. He left America and crossed the sea to Japan, bringing with him massive earthquakes, tsunamis, and a hurricane. Since I was unprepared for the sudden attack, I was focusing all my power on trying to prevent disaster by minimizing the damage. It was then that Poseidon appeared, trident and all, and called for a duel. In my anger I accepted, and we had a mighty battle that lasted for a week. It took the combined powers of the Shinto and Greek gods to stop widespread destruction. So you pissed off the wrong guy and had to deal with the aftermath, Indra states. Choosing to ignore that statement, Susanoo continued his explanation. As our fight was coming to an end, I had a lapse in judgment, and Poseidon landed a deadly blow to my body. As my godly body was dying, I came to my senses and realized what I had done. In an attempt to stop Poseidon's rage, I proposed a deal. I would offer myself up, and in return he would forget about harming Japan. He agreed, but what he did next was beyond what I could have expected. He ripped out my godly essence, and squeezed it together, and merged it with 10 sea pearls, trapping my power. After that he left a battered land and what was left of my body behind. So Poseidon took your godly power and trapped it in pearls. But that doesn't make sense. The necklace you're residing in has Magatama beads, not pearls, Indra interjected. That would be my handiwork. With the last bit of power left in me, I used one of my tendons, turned it into a string, and put my soul in it to avoid death. After that I left the string in the hands of one of my sister's followers. So you aren't the beads, you're the string? Indra inquired. Yes, but at the same time, no. What Poseidon doesn't know is that to use more than one pearl at once, he requires a piece of my body which has now become part of the sea. When a pearl is put on the necklace, I transform it into a Magatama bead. No way am I leaving my power in the shape of his ugly-ass pearls, Susanoo replied. Indra's mind was swirling with the new information. It answered his question on how his mother was able to use Susanoo when fighting the monsters. But it also left him with many, many more questions and theories. There was so much more to the world. So much he didn't know about the Greeks. He didn't even know how the necklace came to be with his family in the first place. I can answer that. You, Indra Arakawa, are a descendant of the young woman I left my soul string to. More specifically, your mother's side. I've been passed down for years from parent to child until your maternal grandfather moved to the United States with your mother a year before your birth. She knew how to use my power, since it was that very same power that was used to ward off monsters on their journey to America that ultimately led to your grandfather's untimely demise. It seemed that he hadn't escaped from trouble after his last life. It followed him to this world and was slowly brewing until his life flipped over and he landed in the hospital after a supernatural attack. So what happens now? Indra finally asks. He was stuck in the hospital for the time being, but the path ahead was unknown. For now, stay under the radar. As long as I'm around your neck, I will do my best to shield you from the eyes of monsters and gods alike. Recuperate and practice your abilities. I can shield you for at most 2 years before gods can find you with their divine sight. What about the other fragments of your power? Where are they now? Indra questioned. It could be disastrous if there were giants going around with Susanoo armor. They are scattered around the world. But most of them supposed to be here in America. During the Second World War that the children of your big 3 gods initiated Zeus, Hades, and Poseidon, they were lost in the fighting. That's why your mother and grandfather came to America. They found the pearls of my power that were in Japan and moved here to gather the rest. What happens if they are all together? I will be reborn. Susanoo speaks in a whispered tone. Extra, pots and lightning don't mix. It was a normal day for Indra. He had finished school earlier and didn't have any homework, so he decided to clean up around the house. His mother was in her room taking to some of her old friends back in Japan, and he was bored out of his mind. The books he ordered to read up on, engineering for beginners, still hadn't come in. He walked up to the sink, pulled over a stool, damn his height, and started cleaning the dishes. They had piled up since breakfast and had yet to be done. As he was washing them, he quickly noticed that it was difficult for his small hands to dry the dishes in a timely manner. So, he thought up a shortcut. He would use his aerokinesis to lift the dishes in the air and surround them with a warm breeze to dry them more efficiently. It was a good idea. A great one even. He got to easily finish his task whilst also practicing the more minute aspects of his powers. What he didn't realize was that the static in the air was being drawn to him unconsciously. He was washing a metal pot, with it being in his right hand and a sponge being in his left. Just as the sponge made contact with the metal, the static reacted to his power and generated a series of sparks that traveled to the hand holding the pot and shocked him. Damn it! Indra cried out. In his shock, he dropped the pot and it fell into the sink, smashing down onto a bowl and cracking it in half. The crashing sound alerted his mom, and as he heard her footsteps approaching, he quickly placed the floating dishes on the counter just as she walked in the room. Indra, I heard you yell. Is everything all right? His mom asked in a worried tone. I'm fine, Ka-san. But I broke a bowl, Indra hesitantly replies. Damn this body and its fast reflexes. Oh dear, while I'm happy you decided to help out, I think it would be best if you stop for now. I'll clean up the mess, she says in a humorous tone. Needless to say, Indra felt humiliated. He was supposed to be an adult, for crying out loud. Even if his body was that of a child, it was embarrassing to mess up something so simple. Indra was training again, as he had been doing for over a year now. Following his initial conversation with Susanoo, he spent the next week of his hospital stay learning more about the gods and his family history, among various other things concerning the defeated god. Several of his questions were also answered. Why didn't the Shinto gods do anything to help Susanoo in his time of need? The main reason was that the battle took place in the open sea, where sea gods reign absolute. They could have interfered, but the damage both gods caused was catastrophic. The sea does not like to be tamed nor contained. Why didn't they do anything after his death? The powers of the Shinto gods were inferior to the Greek gods across the sea. Ever since foreigners came to Japan and began converting its citizens to different religions in the 1400s, their powers were waning while the Greek gods were growing stronger as America prospered, having a different root of power. Lastly, who was the name of the demigod that caused this whole incident? You want to know the bastard sea spawn's name, huh? Better not be thinking anything funny. His name was Matthew Calbraith Perry, self-proclaimed favorite son of Poseidon. No way I can forget his name after he went around declaring it left and right to the sea life. Susanoo complained. He never wanted to see another son of Poseidon in his life. After that week of recovery, Indra's mother had finally woken up from her coma. It was a moment filled with tears and hugs. Indra more so, since he no longer was stuck having an annoying god as his only companion. It took several more weeks before his mother could return to daily life. She suffered bruising, broken blood vessels, and microfractures that left her in a withered state. While she was recovering, Indra spent the majority of those weeks finishing 5th grade so he could focus on other things. The hospital was kind enough to send someone to pick up and return his schoolwork so he could stay with his mother. Indra also came clean on what he knew about the Greek gods and Susanoo, while she in turn told him what she knew and her intentions for the future, since she no longer had possession of the necklace. Indra, I pass on this task of collecting the Magatama beads of Susanoo to you. It's no longer safe for you to take it off if what your father said about demigod children of the Big Three were true. His mother had told him. What did he say? Indra asked. Anything regarding his father and the status of the Greek gods in the modern age was much appreciated. Following the events of World War II, the Big Three gods, Zeus, Hades, and Poseidon, swore an oath to never again have demigod children. They were too powerful and destructive for the world. Heya explained. There has to be more to it than that. If what I've read is true, then why didn't they stop having children before? Indra wondered. I was never told. Just that you needed to be careful after you were claimed. Other gods and goddesses won't take kindly to a child born from a broken oath. Heya shook her head. She was as much in the dark as her son was. I wouldn't know either, kids, so don't ask. Probably because their wives wouldn't be too happy when they did. Susanoo unhelpful added in his head. That was another thing Indra learned. Susanoo can only communicate with someone if he is being warned by them. The wearer is able to telepathically communicate with him, and he can also read the surface thoughts of the wearer. It's convenient when in the presence of other people, but not so much for Indra's privacy. He had to be more careful with what he was thinking to not reveal anything of his past life. It would be a pain if Susanoo began questioning him about his past life where humans possessed godlike power or the ability to achieve it. Once Heya had been officially discharged from the hospital and heard about Susanoo's deadline, she made the decision for them to move up to New York. While more dangerous because they were in close proximity to Olympus, it also gave her some reassurance, since if anything happened again he was close enough where he could be driven to the demigod camp within an hour. The same camp that she and Indra had unanimously decided to not go to for the time being. If he went, he wouldn't be able to freely practice his powers and the gods would find him regardless of Susanoo's assistance. It would be like waving a bright red flag in the air while yelling in a megaphone, "I am here." So when they moved to New York, they got a house with a few acres of land in a hilly, forested area. A stream ran through the middle of the property, with their house being situated on a nearby hill. That leads Indra to the present. It was currently dawn, and Indra began his morning with a series of katas along with familiarizing with his power by letting it flow throughout his body. Hey kid, Susanoo said. Indra paused in his warm-up and listened to Susanoo. What? Indra asked. TCH, still as rude as ever. You know it's a great privilege to even be speaking to me. You could learn some respect. Susanoo grumbled. He did that a lot in Indra's presence. While not on bad terms, they did get on each other's nerves more often than not. You're nearly 10 years old now. In a few months my protection will expire. At least, that was my initial prediction. What do you mean? If he didn't before, Susanoo now had Indra's full attention. I wasn't expecting your powers to grow so rapidly. Quite frankly, it's incredible. I've seen my fair share of Greek demigods. Your great-grandfather, one of my previous wearers, fought some in World War II. They were all full-grown adults, but even they didn't show a fraction of the power you are using at a measly 9 years of age. It's as if you already know how to use your power to its full potential. Susanoo explained. So how long do we have? Indra queried. He was going to ignore the last bit Susanoo said. In his opinion, he wasn't nearly strong enough for what's destined to come. 1 month. You have 1 month before my power is insufficient to hide you. But, at the same time, since you have rapidly grown in power, your body has become strong enough to start training to wield the mighty power of me, Susanoo no Mikoto. He would be able to use Susanoo? While it was a familiar power, as he had it in his previous life, would he really be able to withstand it here? Before he got his Rinnegan, using Susanoo would cause pain in every cell of his body, and he was a teenager then. Trust me, if you start slow, you'll be able to use it. What happened to your mom won't happen to you. You are far more durable as a demigod. Susanoo reassured, misunderstanding the real reason Indra was unsure. Alright then, where do I start? Indra asked, while he had an idea of how it was best to make sure he was right. Exactly what you're thinking. Draw on the power of the beads and materialize it. Susanoo had full confidence Indra would be able to do it. The mortals of his lineage were able to, and as a demigod, he might even see something different. Indra shut his eyes and focused on the beads. He was able to feel the immense power in them instantaneously after wearing the necklace for nearly 2 years. He slowly began to draw upon the power. Even just the small amount he was pulling filled him with power. It reminded him of when he implanted Itachi's eyes. He could feel power continuously grow and change the more time passed. Outside of Indra's shut eyes, the air began to distort. Small ripples similar to a heat haze appeared around him. The more power he took, the more the distortion became real as a phantom ribcage started materializing around his being. Oh, interesting. I haven't seen this color before. Susanoo quietly thought to himself. All the others who used his power had varying shades of blue and purple. Demigods were no exception. While he may not actively be able to sense the other fragments of his power, he can feel them and get small visions when they are activated. Demigods used his various fragments through the years. That's how he was able to guide the Arakawa family to America. During World War II, he could vaguely feel at least 4 fragments while they were used. As Susanoo was caught in his thoughts, the ribcage fully formed. Indra opened his eyes and instantly tears appeared in the corners. It wasn't because of the pain from using the power. Nor was it because he was happy to use Susanoo again. It was because of the color. It was orange with hints of yellow and red. The color of his late brothers. Emotions were welling up inside him. Surprise. Pain. Love. Hate. Melancholy. A series of words flashed through Indra's mind as the autumn lights reflected in his eyes. You don't ever have to forgive me, and whatever you do from here on out, know this, no matter what, I will love you always. Indra clenched his fists and deactivated the ethereal ribcage. He looked up at the sky to see storm clouds rumbling overhead, a dark contrast to the previously sunny morning. Hey kid, are you alright? Your mind's a mess right now. Susanoo asked in a slightly worried tone. 1 second his troublesome prodigy was all gung-ho, and the next he's changing the weather. It was concerning. It's nothing. Indra says, let's end things for today. I'm going back inside. Rain began to fall as Indra walked silently. Susanoo stayed quiet as well, leaving him to his thoughts. 5 days till deadline. Faster, kid. I know you can do better. With the new deadline Susanoo set, Indra's training kicked up several notches. With his mother's help along with some hired workers, a large obstacle course was created on their land shortly after they had moved in. It went in an upside-down U-shape around the 100-acre property. Quite literally over the hills, through the woods, but instead of grandmother's house you fell into a river halfway through where you were pelted by tennis ball throwers. The obstacle course was a great way to build both muscle and endurance. In Susanoo's words, it puts anything the mortal military has to shame. Right now Indra was about halfway through, trying to finish in a new record time. His best being just shy of 13 minutes. Considering the obstacle course was over 1.5 miles long littered with dangerous but non-lethal traps, he was doing pretty well for himself. He could do much better, but for the sake of improving himself, Indra refuses to use his powers to help him. If he did, he could give himself a boost with wind and destroy any traps he comes across. Indra leapt back just as a massive swinging log went past him. Currently, he was at one of the more difficult parts. He had to jump onto different stakes of wood in the ground, all while dodging logs and other contraptions trying their best to intercept him. Using superhuman reflexes, Indra jumped forward onto one of the swinging logs. Using his hands, he used a nearby tree branch as a handhold, and flung himself onto another passing log. Then, using that as a footstep, he pushed off, shooting forward and flipping in the air, landing on the ground beyond the stakes. Not giving himself a break, Indra presses forward, climbing over various walls and ropes, sliding under fallen trees, and avoiding near-invisible wire traps that span the obstacle course. Indra pulled out of the forest running full speed. The end was in sight. His mother was at the end cheering him on, stopwatch in hand. He passed the finish line, his driveway that goes from the main road at the start of their property to the middle where their house is, and collapses on the ground gasping for air. 11 minutes and 58 seconds. That's a new record, Indra. Kaya, I'm so proud of you. Heya cries out with glee as she comes over to him with a water bottle and protein bar. Indra immediately grasps the water from his mother's hands as he sits himself up. When he finishes, his mom immediately hugs him. Indra allows himself to smile. His mom really was his whole world. Now I need to get the house decorated. It's not every day you turn 10 years old. Double digits is an important milestone, Heya exclaims. Oh yeah? Indra thinks. He had been too preoccupied with his training the last few weeks that he didn't notice his birthday fast approaching. Now Indra, continue training until I come out to get you. It may be your birthday, but I am not going to let you slack off. It seemed as he was getting older, his mom was getting more Spartan-like as well. Yes, Ka-san, Indra reassures. He watches his mother's back for a moment before refocusing on his training. This was the last circuit he would be doing on the obstacle course. Next was Susanoo. You ready, kid? This next lesson won't be no cakewalk, as you Americans say. You'll be manifesting an arm as well as a ribcage now. Susanoo speaks up, reading Indra's thoughts. After his initial breakdown from manifesting the Susanoo, Indra began to train it, working to manifesting it faster and sturdier. But most importantly, he was letting his body adapt to the foreign power so he could use it. Was no point in an ability that has minimal combat value. Without shutting his eyes like he first did, Indra called upon the power of Susanoo, and an orange ethereal ribcage manifested around him. Time to kick it up a notch, Indra thought. Pulling on more power than he had before, the air rippled to his left and a skeletal arm began materializing. A moment later, Indra had an extra powerful limb to control. He could feel the power it held. It's stronger than when I unlocked Susanoo with my initial Mangekyo Sharingan. A sudden urge came over him and he ran with his Susanoo activated, and he ran to the nearest tree. With a simple thought, the ethereal arm punched forward at blinding speeds and smashed against the bark of the tree, caving it in and causing splinters to fly out everywhere. The tree itself broke in half and the disconnected part went flying several meters before hitting the ground, causing a loud crashing noise from the collision and breaking branches. Dust flew out in the air and Indra used his powers to blow it away as it got near him. Even if you surpass my expectations daily, I get surprised every time. You're a natural kid, Susanoo commented. Indra was about to respond when he froze up. The pain in his body amplified as he got dizzy and nearly fell to the ground. The Susanoo ribcage and arm evaporated as he kneeled on the ground. Hey, it looks like you overdid yourself, Susanoo teased. An annoyed look passed Indra's face as he heard that. I'll have to practice more, he told himself. I would advise against that right now. Your body has yet to adjust to the extra power. Even if you are a demigod, an actual god's power is something beyond your current limits. Just as Indra was about to respond, he heard his mom call him from the house. Superhuman hearing allowed him the privilege of picking up sounds from far away easily, something his mother used to her advantage. While Heya had mostly recovered, she still had some issues that made walking difficult. Hey, I guess your training's over for now, Susanoo says. Indra began walking back to his house as he thought about new moves he could develop with his powers. Maybe he could imitate a Rasengan by making an orb of wind and filling it with lightning? It would certainly be destructive. Indra quit thinking about training as he approached the door. He opened the door, walking in and taking off his shoes, before walking further into the house. Why are the lights off? Indra wondered. As he neared the kitchen where he assumed his mom would be, preparing dinner as she always did after his training, he heard a click and the room lit up. A pop went off and streamers flew at him, covering him. Surprise! Indra's mother yelled out with a smile. Indra's eyes widened. He opened his mouth to response when his mother shoved a paper party horn in it, and loud zilling noise sounded as she slapped him in the face with hers. He flinched back in surprise and Haya began laughing hysterically. Ha ha ha, I got you good, Indra, she said between laughs. Her laughter was contagious, and it didn't take long before he was laughing too, if but more subdued. A few more minutes passed like that with the both of them blowing their party horns at each other, trying to make the other laugh. Happy birthday, Indra! Haya smiled at him, giving Indra a hug. Zua! He completed the hug and gave a very mature response in return. It was worth it since he could feel his mom's laugh from their embrace. Let's get this party started, Haya shouted with gusto. With how tense the last month has been with the deadline approaching, this was exactly what they needed to let loose and enjoy themselves. The next hour was a blur for Indra. They did an assortment of activities to pass the time as they ate dinner, which was more of a buffet where they picked from an assortment of food and treats while they did other things. They played different board games, chatted and listened to music courtesy of a surround sound system that was connected throughout the entire house. Once dinner was finished, they watched a movie on their TV in the living room, which was really just a home theater with couches, beanbags, and everything else comfy and relaxing. Halfway through their movie they took a break for dessert. That was where the real fun began. Indra was sitting at the dining table as his mom walked into the room carrying a birthday cake with 10 candles in it. The cake had a frosting tomato on the top with the words Happy Birthday Indra drawn on with even more frosting. Something Indra had found out early in this life was that he could actually eat sweets and enjoy them. His taste buds actually liked them as opposed to abhorring them like in his last life. Make a wish. Haya spoke in a soft tone, the candlelight dancing in her eyes. Indra shut his eyes for a moment. He was wishing for the same thing he did every year, only this time he was going to try something new. Hestia, goddess of hearth and home, I'm not going to say any fancy words or prostrate myself to you, but I ask that you keep my mother safe and happy. I ask that you keep her safe from the coming storm so that no harm may befall her. She means more to me than you will ever know. Indra was praying to a god for the first time in his life. He had read in various stories and literature that back in ancient times mortals would pray to gods for various things. With the deadline being less than 5 days away, he figured praying to a goddess that has been proven to be nothing but kind that nothing bad would happen. It was also a sort of greetings to the gods, an early one, but first impressions are important when dealing with powers far beyond your strength. Indra opened his eyes and blew out the candles. If the room getting noticeably warmer and the deep feeling of peace and happiness welling up inside him was any indication, his prayer was answered. Let's feast. And for the second time that day, they ate to their heart's content. Or so Indra had hoped. Just after he took a bite from the cake, out of the corner of his eye, he noticed his mom look at him, an evil grin on her face. Without any preparation, he was surprised again as she raised her arms at him, armed with 2 cans of silly string. Hee, always be prepared for an ambush, Indra dear, Haya said in a sweet voice before all hell broke loose. Indra's face was blasted with silly string, and it got everywhere. In his hair, on his pants, in his shirt. He raised his arms to protect himself from the ambush as Haya laughed before running out the sliding door in the dining room and outside, only 1 can in hand. Ha! She got you good, kid, Susano teased, speaking for the first time since training. We'll see who gets the last laugh, Indra responded, quickly standing up, brushing some silly string off himself as he grabbed the can that his mom had left and chased after her. He would get his payback one way or another. Running out of the house, he looked around for any signs of his mom. Not seeing her in sight, he decided to cheat a bit. He called upon his powers and felt the vibrations in the air around the house and quickly found her right behind him. He spun around and got another face full of silly string. You cheater, I know you used your powers, she said with a smile. Indra made his own counterattack. His finger pressed down on the nozzle and his own silly string struck her. It's not cheating if there were no rules to begin with, Indra retorted. What came next was a deadly dance as they ran around firing silly string at each other while trying to dodge each other. Indra would like to think he was winning now, but his mother was more agile than he expected, keeping him on his toes. In the end, he admitted defeat as when they both ran out of silly string, Indra had more on him. Well, of course I won. I'm your amazing, beautiful, spectacular mother, Haya bragged as they walked back inside. Indra used some nifty aerokinesis to clean up all the silly string on the ground and deposited it into the trash. It was dark now and Haya brought Indra over to the living room to open his presents. 2 boxes wrapped in streamer-themed wrapping paper were placed in front of him. Thanks, Ka-san, Indra said. Don't thank me yet, open them up first, Heya replied while putting one of the presents in his hands. Indra began tearing the paper, the crinkling noise filling up the room as he opened the box, revealing a black leather case. He opened it and found it held 20 shuriken, all bronze in color. Shuriken? Indra said in a surprised tone. Yup, every now and then I heard you mention how useful they would be when fighting monsters, so I made some special for you, Heya happily answered. What kind of metal is this? Indra asked. It certainly wasn't steel. That, my dearest son, would be celestial bronze. Heya took one of the shuriken between her fingers as she continued her explanation. When I met your father, he also gave me a crash course in the workings of the Greeks. This metal is supposedly mined on Olympus, and it's the most effective metal for slaying monsters. If it's from Olympus, then how did you get it? He didn't even know where Olympus was, besides that it was somewhere in New York City. A mortal even going to the home of the gods is something he couldn't wrap his head around. Believe it or not, most of this metal was collected by your grandfather and great-grandfather. They got it from demigods and other beings they fought throughout their lives. Even then it was only enough to make these shuriken, and Heya stopped and gestured to the other present. Setting the shuriken to the side, Indra opened the other present and found a similar leather case, but instead of shuriken, it had kunai. Kunai, Indra said matter-of-factly. He didn't think he would ever use them again after his last life. It brought back some hidden emotions in him along with memories. Countless hours of training and fighting passed through his mind as he inspected the kunai. It was as if a missing part of himself had been returned. You made all this? The shock in his voice was evident. He didn't even know his mother knew how to forge. You don't go 30 years living in a supernatural world without picking up some skills, Heya answered. It was something she taught herself after coming to America, where there weren't any regulations on making weapons or other things. It was also a good way to keep herself busy while she was pregnant when Indra was a baby. Thank you? This time Indra really meant it, not that he didn't before. I'm glad you're happy. We should get to bed in a bit. You can practice using them later. Day of Reveal. After his birthday, Indra spent the next 3 days refamiliarizing himself with his ninja skills. He had just gotten back to his old skill level last night, his Uchiha pride not allowing him to be subpart in Shuriken Jutsu even if this was another life. Today, he and his mother were both in solemn moods. The dreaded day had come and they had no idea when exactly Indra's power would surpass Susanoo's protective cloak. They had gotten up early in the morning preparing for the inevitable. Indra himself was decked out in everything he would need if something happened. He had a hiking-style backpack on his back filled with supplies. He was wearing one of his black, Uchiha collared shirts along with a long-sleeved undershirt. He also wore black Adidas sweatpants that had 2 white lines going down both legs with bandages wrapping around the ankles to keep the fabric in place. Finishing the look, on either leg, the new leather weapon holders were present filled with his birthday gifts. He and his mother were sitting outside on a bench they had in their yard as they waited. Indra could feel the balance of power between him and Susanoo slowly shift. Indra, I don't know what will happen. In fact, nothing might happen and we are just overreacting, but just in case, I want you to know that I love you. Heya spoke in a soft tone as they watched the cloudy sky. Don't worry, Kao-san, whatever happens I'll handle it, Indra tried to reassure. Heya shook her head and sighed. The gods are not to be trifled with. Worst case scenario, we get smote out of existence. Just a small page in their endless lives. That won't happen, Indra said in a dark tone. He fought gods before, even killed some, they weren't infallible. He doubted these ones were either. Even if they tried to smite you, I got your back. I should be able to block an attack or two with my current power. Susanoo would make sure his benefactors would survive. He owed this family an unpayable debt. Without them, he would have ceased to exist long ago. They went silent as the cloudy sky darkened further and began swirling around as ominous winds blew around them. It's time. Indra and Heya stood up as they watched a storm form in the sky. The wind picked up and a tornado was forming in the distance. Your father is angry, Heya told Indra. Thunder rumbled through the sky, the tornado was slowly getting bigger. The wind was getting uncomfortably loud as they were nearly swept off their feet. A howling was heard coming from the forest and Indra could see what looked like wind spirits, flying through the clouds. Minutes passed and they couldn't talk to each other even if they wanted. The thunder and wind was booming in their ears and even the ground began to subtly shake. But then, everything stopped. No, it was more accurate to say everything around them was silenced. Indra could feel his heart pounding as his hand reached down to his leg, a kunai brushing the tips of his fingers. Suddenly, a loud boom sounded behind them, knocking them off their feet. Indra quickly turned around to see a woman standing in a small clearing of scorched grass. She has long licorice black hair, large, soft brown eyes, and a face of regal and unapproachable beauty like that of a supermodel. A crown sat on her head as she wore a sneer, her eyes unnaturally bright and dangerous. "Found you, boy," the woman spat, her voice dark but noble, carrying a queenly tone. Extra, daily struggles of a god. Susanoo wasn't always like this, stuck as a necklace around some brat's neck. But it allowed him to experience the life of a mortal. But now, he was experiencing something new, the life of a demigod. The more time Susanoo spent with Indra, the more impressed he became. The boy could jump 10 feet in the air with no difficulty, run as fast as the world's fastest runner, and learn anything you threw at him almost instantly. It was a large contrast to his past hosts who would train daily, pushing themselves to their limits and only being able to do a small fraction of what this boy could do in less than a quarter of the time. Being a necklace also served as a form of entertainment. He got to laze around all day every day watching his hosts' lives like a movie, or better yet, actually watch a movie. Like right now, he was watching one of those wildlife documentaries. This one was about penguins and how they deal with seals that hunt them. "Hey, Indra," Susanoo said. "Yes. You're kinda like one of those penguins. Fast and dumb. Hee, you even dressed like one, all black and white." Tormenting the kid was something Susanoo never got sick of. HN. HN? What kind of response was that? "Hey Indra, I have a secret to tell you." HN. Are you ignoring me? HN. Scratch that, being a necklace was not entertaining, it was the worst. 0/10, would not recommend. "Found you, boy," the goddess spat in a dark tone. Sensing killing intent from the woman, Indra drew a kunai in his left hand and positioned himself in front of his mother. Thunder rolled through the clouds, sending dark promises of pain should anyone make a wrong move. The dark sky reflected the storm raging behind Hera's eyes. "You're a god," Indra stated matter-of-factly. There was no other explanation for how she appeared along with the power she exuded. And if the crown atop her head and peacock cloak said anything, this encounter was going to be a headache. "I am not just any goddess. I am Hera, Queen of Olympus," Hera responded in a cold voice. As if making a point, thunder sounded again, briefly illuminating her shadowed face with lightning. Indra heard his mother gasp from behind him. Her face slowly turned to one of fear and horror. The one god they had never wanted to meet was now standing on their doorstep. "What does the Queen of Olympus want with a kid and his family peacefully living in the woods?" Indra asked, feigning ignorance while also buying time and digging for information. If the secrecy he has been put under for years and the stories of Hercules were anything to go off of, she wasn't here for a chat about the weather. What indeed, Hera said, crossing her arms and putting on a contemplative face while tapping her chin. "Perhaps, I simply wished to see the mortal spawn my beloved husband cheated on me to have." Or Hera continued, her face slowly becoming more cruel as she spoke each word. Or what? As much as he wished he could just call upon the winds to get his mother out of harm's way, Indra guessed that Hera would be able to feel if he used his powers. This storm wasn't his doing, and it didn't feel like his father's doing, so that only left the being in front of him. He never read that Hera had powers similar to Zeus, or at least this much. Or Hera answered, "I could kill you now and be done with it." She took a step forward with a confident and proud face, looking every part the evil stepmother from fairy tales. "No!" Hea yelled and rushed forward, placing herself in front of Indra, reversing their roles of protector and protected. "Leave my son alone! I'm the one at fault, not him. Your feud is with me." "Ka-san!" Don Indra started. His eyes widened, it was as if he forgot how to talk, his voice betraying him. Silence. Hera hushed him with but a look, and for the first time in this life, Indra felt as though things were now beyond him and his abilities. The adults are speaking. Indra could practically see the glint in her eyes as she set her gaze on Hea. She was like a predator that had just set sights on the most delectable prey before a long winter. Or like the Rouge shinobi he often fought in his days as Sasuke the wandering ninja. "Do tell me, mortal, why I should stay my hand and leave the boy alive?" Hera asked Hea with a fake inquisitive tone. Hea stared down the goddess. After spending years holding Susanoo and being around Indra, she had begun to feel the powers of others, not just an instinct but a genuine sixth sense. So when she saw how Hera was practically exploding with raw power, and had clearly set her vengeance on her son, she did what she thought she had to do. Lady Hera? If I may humbly speak, my son is not at fault for your husband being unfaithful, it's mine. And seeing as you are the goddess of family, and more importantly, childbirth, you should know that the fault of a parent does not lie with the child. As Hea spoke in a slow and calculating voice, Indra was forced to watch from behind. He felt if he moved, the tense peace would snap. He watched as Hera's face, which had been amused at first, slowly became shadowed and gloomy. The clouds overhead picked up on her mood and began to flash with lightning as rain began to fall. But it never touched them. Instead, it fell around them like an invisible umbrella was being held over their heads. You're right, Hera said quietly, her features hard to make out. Then, the ground began to rumble. Hera looked straight at Hea with a murderous glare. It's your fault. And as such, you shall be punished for crossing a goddess. Hea's eyes widened and she quickly turned towards Indra. On the other side, a dark look made its way onto Indra's face that would give a scowl from Hades a run for its money. He drew upon his powers, calling the wind to hasten his steps as he rushed forward faster than the naked eye could follow. Susanoo, remember that time a year ago with the water nymph? Indra called in his mind. You mean the time where you got a whooping by a girl you just met? Susanoo responded in his head. That was not what happened. Details. If you think it'll work, then go for it. In response, Indra briefly called upon the power of Susanoo. Only instead of becoming a tangible substance, the power mixed with Indra's and became a part of his, waiting for his call. Indra appeared before Hera almost instantaneously, his kunai drawn as he swung out, aiming not to kill but to maim and impair. It was beyond question whether he had the ability to kill her, but if he could at least incapacitate her, then it might give him enough time to take Hea and run. Both god and demigod watched as milliseconds passed, the bronze blade inching ever so slowly towards Hera's eyes. As it reached the edge of her hairline near her ear, Hera disappeared in a flash and reappeared to Indra's left. A bead of sweat fell from his brow. Teleportation. While he saw Hera do it when she arrived, he wasn't sure if it was effective in a fight. It seemed it was, as he barely had time to react as he was launched sideways by an invisible force and thrown against a tree over 100 feet away. He crashed against the trunk with a snap and a cry escaped his lips as he fell limp against the ground, clutching his arm. He could feel that his upper right arm was shattered and he was sure he fractured a rib or two. Hera far exceeded his ability in combat. If not in skill, then in power. Fine then, two can play that game. Summoning the winds to his aid again, Indra disappeared from his spot and then started closing in on Hera, as she stood watching with an arrogant smirk. Fumbling with his remaining hand, he drew another kunai and threw it at her, sparking with electricity. Adrenaline increased the speed of his throw. The kunai went right past Hera's face, drawing a line of golden ichor on her cheek as she was forced to dodge, smirk gone from her face. Indra called upon the lightning in his kunai while more lightning came from his palm. Then, with skill and ability that should be far beyond his age and ability, water materialized like a string between the kunai and his palm, the moisture being taken out of the air with the mix of his and Susanoo's power. Before Hera could even think, the lightning traveled along the waterline, which had by now manifested around her like a net, and electrocuted her. She collapsed onto the ground as the energy surged through her. The world lit up as Hera cried out in agony. Seeing his chance, Indra appeared next to his mother and taking her hand, dragging her away from the wounded goddess. Ka-sen, run! Indra commanded. A bit of lightning wouldn't stop a god. As if to drive the point home, the water and lightning net that had previously entrapped Hera collided with Indra, knocking him away from his mom and shocking him. While he had a strong resistance against lightning, it did nothing to lessen the pain coursing through him. He collapsed in a heap on the grass, the net dissipating into nothingness. The invisible umbrella that had protected them from the rain disappeared and Indra was quickly being drowned in water. Wait, drowned. The rainwater was being collected around his head, cutting him off from the air he desperately needed after the shock and tumble knocked it out of his lungs. But, instead of grasping at the water in an attempt to remove it, he simply willed the air around him to pull the water off his head. His black hair was matted down over his face as he spit out water that had gotten in his mouth. Indra suppressed a cough he felt coming in favor of looking up. To his horror, Hera was ignoring him and instead stalking towards his mother, who seemed to be frozen in place. He could see Hea struggle from whatever invisible restraints held her. With great effort, Indra heaved himself to his unsteady feet and once again dove into the fray, the rain silencing his footsteps. Close combat and tricks don't work, so what about this? As Indra closed the distance, he reached into himself and drew upon every ounce of power available. Sensing his power at play, Hera stopped and glanced at him, her hand raising, most likely to throw him again. Before she could, however, the wind around her picked up and in an instant a tornado surrounded her, blocking her vision and everything in a 20-foot radius. The behemoth was slowly growing even larger and higher as it connected with the clouds above. In a last-ditch effort to win, Indra raised his hand to the sky and called. Lightning arced around in the sky and appeared like cracks of shattered concrete as they converged overhead of the tornado. Indra was about to use his last attack. If tricks in combat were ineffective and a drawn-out battle was impossible, then all that was left was pure destructive force. While the move he was attempting was incomplete as he had yet to remaster it, the strength behind it should be enough to leave some real hurt. The lightning intensified and finished converging overhead, appearing as a small blue sun. Torapes, Indra said coolly, the Greek language coming forward subconsciously. He dropped his arm down, palm facing the ground. If there was one thing he could claim to be a master of in his last life, it was lightning. He took the chakra nature to depths no one had come close to before. Manipulating it almost completely without chakra, simply directing the raw natural element to rain destruction on his foes. Above, the blue sun shined before blasting down as a blue beam of pure energy. Vaguely, one could hear the cry of a beast. The explosion that followed was deafening as an impossibly loud boom sounded out. The tornado could be seen lighting up in a heavenly blue glow before swiftly breaking apart. The wind rushed out in every direction, knocking both Indra and his mother off their feet from the force of it. He was forced to shield his eyes as dirt and rocks flew past him. As the wind quieted down and debris settled, he brought his hand away from his eyes to see the results of his attack. As he gazed on, he felt a chill run down his spine. Standing in the epicenter of a crater of smoking ash and molten rock, was Hera, unscathed and very much alive and well. In the corner of his eye, he could see Hea watching along with him, her eyes wide in disbelief. The warm smoke and mist created from the explosion and fallen rain snaked around her, as if greeting her. Her cheek was healed and all that was visible of their fight was slightly disheveled hair and clothing. Her gaze landed on him, and they locked eyes. Enough games, child. I'm ending this here and now. She spoke, her voice traveling the distance between them with an echo. Collapsing on the ground, all energy and adrenaline depleted, Indra was forced to sit and watch as Hera put her hand out facing Hea and began to chant. To Indra, it was a sentence that would forever plague him. In English she said, I curse you to forget your child and memories of him, but to forever suffer dreams of his demise. While Hea may not die, it was a fate worse than death to never remember her own beloved child. Both she and Indra felt a wave of power surround her and begin to seep into her skin. Dredging up whatever strength he had left, Indra brought himself to his feet and cried out. He watched as Hea looked at him with tears in her eyes and how they slowly went blank like glassy marbles. He felt as his heart began to crack and break apart as he failed his family, for which he knew there was no coming back from, for the final time. Ignoring his broken arm and bruised body, he dug his fingers into his kunai pouch and pulled out several shuriken in each hand. Adding wind as a boost, he threw them at Hera, aiming for all the vital spots on her body and those that would cause the most pain, and watched as they closed in on her. But the weapons never reached Hera. They burst into flames before they could get near, the heat causing the surrounding rain to sizzle and turn to mist. At the same time, Hea's eyes began to glow and a new power descended on their surroundings. Hea began to glow and her eyes returned to normal. A soft flame licked across her feet around her, and she let out a gasp. A feeling of hope, love, and peace came over both her and Indra, causing Hera's eyes to widen in disbelief. Hestia? Hera whispered. It was Indra's turn to be surprised after hearing her. Was the fire goddess Hestia's doing? Why would she interfere? Did it have anything to do with his prayer he made to her days prior? As the questions formed and dissipated in Indra's mind, Hera's face was a cacophony of emotions. From confusion, to anger, to wonder, and finally landing on fear and acceptance. Meanwhile, Hea used that time to make a getaway from the goddess and made her way to where Indra was on his knees catching his breath. Indra, are you okay? Hea asked, breathless. I'll be fine, Ka-san. I should be asking you that, Indra countered. Even if she put up a brave front, Indra could see the subtle shaking of her hands, the way her eyes dilated and jumped around the surroundings like a frightened animal. The witch is coming over, Indra, Susanoo warned from around his neck. Indra's head jerked up and like he was told, Hera was walking over to them. But the rage was gone from her face. I tire of this conflict, Indra. Hera spoke to him in a motherly tone. So I offer you a choice. What choice? Indra shakily replied. the broken ribs making his breathing erratic and voice soft. You and your mother will be left alone. Hera gestured to them with a hand, the other was resting at her side like the threat was gone. And it will be as if this never happened. All you have to do is solve a slight problem that recently came up for me. If you refuse. The threat was left unsaid, but Indra knew what she was saying loud and clear. Accept or die. Many old stories have had mortals smited for far less affronts than fighting against a literal god. Gritting his teeth and glancing at his mother, Indra made his decision. Fine. What do you need? At the same time, he made another conversation. Susanoo. No. The Greeks are infamous for their quests and poor conduct. There's no telling what will happen to you. I wasn't asking. With that, Indra slowly unclasped the necklace and handed it to Hea. He wouldn't put it past Hera to act out against her while he was gone. It's simple. Far more than you deserve. You see, a stray storm stole something of mine. I want it back. Hera answered. Quit dodging the question. Indra snapped back. If this went on any longer, then he would pass out from overexertion. He spent far more of his power than what's healthy. It was like the time he first created a tornado, but 10 times worse. Thunder rumbled overhead, and Hera's eyes flashed a dangerous look. Watch your tone. For your disrespect, I'll have you figure out what is missing yourself. But don't fret, this will direct you to what you need. In a flash of light, a massive, 10-foot diameter bronze sundial. It was painted gold with intricate designs along the edges. But the majority was taken up by a large circle. Engraved in it were 5 rings that ended in the middle. The outer ring, on the top half, was a row of stars. On the bottom half were a few lines that matched up into the next ring, which had grooves. Indra imagined it was to measure angles. The next ring had Roman numerals from 1 to 12. The third ring was just a divider with wave-like details. The second to middle ring had the ancient Greek abbreviations for the cardinal directions and the 4 intermediate ones. The final middle ring had a large star shape, which seemed to emerge from the protruding piece of the device. Shock and disbelief permeated the air as Hea and Indra gazed at the sundial. Where exactly is this spirit supposed to be? Indra asked at last. He supposes he shouldn't be too surprised, he expected some sort of catch. Not too far. Only in Alaska. Hera answered with a pause. Like there was some detail she knew but wouldn't tell. How can he possibly use this to find something if he can't even move it? Hea exclaimed. She was as furious as she was despaired. Quiet. Hera sounded. Hea instantly went mute. It was exactly like she had done previously to Indra. She returned focus to Indra, who met her eyes with a glare. Hera smirked in return. Why don't I give you a head start? With a snap of her fingers, both Indra and the sundial disappeared. Indra! Hea yelled out, voice returning. She frantically looked around for any trace of him. Not finding anything, she grabbed the necklace Indra left her along with a shuriken that was on the ground and stood up. Bring him back, she demanded in a cold voice. As if pleased with the reaction, Hera let out a small hum and also disappeared. Thunder rumbled overhead, and rain cascaded down Hea's hair and face. Tears gathered in her eyes as she collapsed on the ground. The sound of her sobs muffled by her hands. Her son was gone. Camp Half-Blood, same day and night. Chiron was having a very bad day and, most recently, night. It started off well enough. No demigods were being mauled by harpies. There were no deadly fights or pranks. In fact, a new camper was even brought in and claimed the very hour. Selena Beauregard, daughter of Aphrodite. A new camper was always a cause for celebration. Unfortunately, this is where things started to sour. It wasn't the fist fight Selena got in with her cabin mates over what type of love was better. It wasn't Dionysus turning a son of Hermes into a dolphin for trying to steal one of his playing cards. It wasn't even the worry he was feeling for Luke, who is far too young to be going on a quest. Poor boy was tasked with stealing a golden apple from the Garden of Hesperides just the day before by Hermes. No, what started his bad day was the hunters of Artemis saying they were spending the night at camp. What followed was one of the worst altercations with the hunters and campers in the last century, with various demigods being admitted to the camp infirmary with critical injuries. The tension only escalated further after that, to the point where Dionysus called it too noisy and left. He wasn't even allowed to leave. That brings him to the present. Total chaos. Hunters and campers were fighting all around. The Hermes, Ares, and Apollo cabins were on fire. Multiple bodies which Chiron could thankfully see breathing were lying on the ground. He could see a daughter of Ares being shot in the shoulder by an arrow. A son of Hermes being punched to the ground by an angry hunter. He even spotted young Selena along with other younger campers trying to put out one of the cabin fires before it spread. As Chiron tried to put a stop to the madness around him, thunder rumbled ominously overhead. All throughout the camp, demigods stopped fighting and looked to the sky as rain started to fall throughout the camp. The message was clear. Stop fighting at once. Chiron could only shake his head in sadness and disappointment. Despite centuries of effort, campers and hunters still couldn't get along. Campers, treat the wounded and return to your cabins. That was all Chiron could say with his weary mind. There were, of course, some small protests, particularly from the Ares cabin, but the unusual rain shut them down. Another boon from the rain was that the cabin fires were doused and died out rather quickly. The rustling of feet, equipment, and debris was muffled as the rain gradually grew stronger. Chiron did his best to oversee what he could and prevent further altercations. Sending the hunters to Artemis' cabin was the first step. The air was too volatile to have both campers and hunters around each other. As he looked to approach Zoe Nightshade, lieutenant of the Hunters of Artemis, and most reasonable of the bunch, he heard a few cries of, "Don't look," before a flash reached the corner of his eye. He turned his head to see Artemis herself appear. And boy did she look pissed. The hunters were originally brought here in the first place because Zeus called her to Olympus and they were already in the area. Chiron's tail flicked slightly as he met the goddess's eyes, but she bypassed him and went directly to her lieutenant. Briefly in the back of his mind, he noted she wasn't in her childlike form. "Zoe," Artemis called. Said girl was quick to respond, "Milady." "Go find Phoebe and Parthenos," instructed Artemis. "I have a task for you three." "Yes, milady," Zoe answered and began to walk away to her fellow hunters. With that, Artemis turned back to Chiron. "Chiron, instruct Zoe to visit the oracle when she returns. Unfortunately, I don't have the time to tell her the details myself." "Of course. I assume something important is happening on Olympus." Artemis nodded. "I cannot explain fully, but let's just say my father is in a foul mood." Before Chiron could begin to comprehend what that might mean, Artemis was gone. A moment later, Zoe, Phoebe, and Parthenos walked over, bows in hand, looking ready for another bout with the campers if the glares were anything to go by. Luckily, they were smart enough to know there was more pressing matters at hand. At least Chiron hoped. "Where has Milady Artemis gone, Chiron?" Zoe asked when she drew near, her head swiveling as she peered around. Chiron tapped one of his back hooves as he replied, "Back to Olympus." Zoe opened her mouth to interrupt. "But she asked for you all to visit the oracle. It seems a quest is in order." Chiron finished before she had the chance to speak. Quest. The one word that put more fear into the old centaur than anything else. For a being whose sole purpose is to watch over and raise demigods, watching them be forced into a deadly task with no way to help is an even greater hell than the underworld itself. Adding on the stress of Luke Calliston being on his own quest and the current state of Camp Half-Blood, Chiron felt like he aged a few centuries at the very least. Zoe Nightshade, on the other hand, had very different thoughts on the matter. It was not often her goddess was so brief in giving tasks. She usually explained what they were to do at the very least before leaving them. Regardless, her goddess has assigned her a task, and she would dutifully complete it. With that thought in mind, she spoke a bit longer with Chiron on arrangements for the hunters at camp while she was away. She had no doubts that something wasn't done, there wouldn't be a camp to return to given the current tensions. Afterwards, Zoe made her way through the camp, past the cabins and debris and over towards the big house, glaring at any male that dared to even look in her general direction. Making her way to the attic, Zoe spent a few moments looking around. The attic was filled with Greek junk, old armor with scratch marks and faded leather, rusting shields and various other items stowed around the room. She spared a glance at some of the plaques, reading them as she passed by. Ithaca, Circle's Isle, and the land of the Amazons. Hair of John Wayne the Cyclops. Hydra Head No. 1, Woodstock. NY, 1969. George Washington's Wig, Mount Vernon. VA, 1785. Then, reaching the end of the room by the window, Zoe saw her objective. Sitting on a wooden tripod stool was a human female body shriveled to a husk. She wore a tie-dyed sundress, lots of beaded necklaces, and a headband over long black hair. The skin of her face was thin and leathery over her skull, and her eyes were glassy white slits. The mummy unnerved Zoe in more ways than one. Not that she would tell anyone, though. Before she had the chance to speak, a green mist poured from the mummy's mouth, coiling over the floor in thick tendrils, hissing with the combined might of thousands of snakes. Inside her head, Zoe heard a voice speak to her. "I am the spirit of Delphi, speaker of the prophecies of Phoebus Apollo, slayer of the mighty Python. approach Seeker and ask. Quietly swallowing, she responded, "What is thy task milady has assigned me?" The green mist responded to her words like coiling serpents. An image appeared overhead that made Zoe's blood run cold. And with the words that came shortly after, cold sweat ran down her back. In a cold land, beyond the reach of the gods, the wind stirred. A young girl leaned against a window, looking bored out of her mind. There was another blizzard outside that had slowly appeared over the course of the day, and looked to have no signs of stopping. The weather had been getting worse and worse over the past few weeks. The abnormal weather was on the back of the girl's mind, however. She focused on the vague reflection of her eyes on the glass. Brown with orange flecks that seemed to glow like embers stared back. With a sigh, the girl looked back to the piling snow outside. When will something interesting finally happen? She muttered to herself softly. Extra. Indra walked down to the creek that flowed past his house. It was part of a larger river that ran through the area and part of the reason he and his mother had moved here. While not as good as a lake or beach, being close to a source of water gave a slight boost to Susanu's power that allowed Indra to train longer when using the god's power. It also, interestingly enough, helped Indra channel his own divine abilities better. When he had questioned the god if it was his doing, his response was quite enlightening. "Of course you feel more powerful in water. You have the best god in the world to thank for that. Blessed your family bloodline back when I entrusted my essence to your ancestor," Susanoo said in a voice that reeked of sarcasm. "What does this blessing give me?" Indra asked, pausing slightly in thought. "Well, a little bit of everything, really. As much faith I have in your family, mortals can only accomplish so much against beings of the mythological world. To even wield my awesome power in the first place, your weak bodies needed some extra durability. Add to that water treating you to the same effects a cup of espresso would have, speaking to fish, and breathing underwater, you all have a much better chance of survival." That actually explained a lot. Back when his mother was in the hospital, Indra had heard the doctors say it was a miracle she was even alive. Not to mention how quickly and completely she recovered. "Anyways," Susanoo interjected, "we got a little off task here. Today you are training in a different use of my power that, coincidentally, shares a bit of old Lighting Beard's domain as well." "Water? I don't remember that being a particular strength of my father," Indra asked in a questioning tone. "Ha! And here I thought you were supposed to be oh so smart," Susanoo goaded. Indra simply scowled and waited. "Man, you're so boring. It's rain." That should have been obvious to Indra in hindsight. He just never tried to manipulate the rain, instead opting to focus on his skill over wind and lightning since they were his core elements in this life. Susanoo drawled on some more, but Indra ignored him in favor of stepping into the stream below and trying to feel the water. It took some time, but finally, like a sixth sense, the creek below became visible in his mind. It was similar to how he had been working on feeling his surroundings with the air, but a bit more muted, like a radar rather than omnidirectional echolocation seen in movies. Reaching out his hand, Indra felt a tug in his gut and a hum of power from his necklace, and pulled. Before his eyes, the water began to divert before it was flowing along the river bank around him. He marveled at the new discovery before water splashed against the back of his head that felt almost like a wet hand slapping him. His concentration broken, the water quickly returned to the creek. Indra's instincts and training took over, his hands sparking to light with bluish-yellow arcs of energy. He spun around sensing a being behind him in the water, and swept his legs low causing his attacker to fall with a squeak. Indra was ready to fight but paused at the being in front of him. A teenage girl with pastel blue skin, brown wavy hair that flowed like water, and a youthful face was rubbing her but where she had fallen in the river. "Oi," the girl cried as she looked up and glared at Indra that to him looked more like a pout. "You jerk! Who do you think you are to come into my river and mess with my water? And to attack me too? What do they teach demigods these days?" Indra quelled his surprise and released the hold over his power, letting the energy dissipate from his hands. "You're a naiad, one of the Potamides," he stated matter-of-factly. "A hot one too," Susanoo added unhelpfully in his mind. The naiad stood up from the water, her clothes perfectly dry, and crossed her arms over her chest in a huff. "Quite the genius, aren't you? What tipped you off?" she snarked. The god watching the interaction burst out laughing. "Bahaha! She's hilarious!" Indra sighed, both at the girl and Susanoo's laughter. "I apologize for attacking you. How were you able to sneak up on me?" From what he could tell, the girl had loose lips. If he could gather information about her abilities, it would be useful in case things went south. The naiad looked at him like he was stupid. "It's my river. I can appear wherever I want in it. especially when some kid comes barging in like a cyclops and begins messing with it. I see, Indra simply replied. It explained how she wasn't detected by him despite being so close. Su, the Naiad drawled as Indra hadn't said anything else. What are you doing with my river? Are you the son of some water deity thinking they can do whatever they want with whatever water they wish? Indra shook his head, ignoring the somehow still laughing god in his mind. I was simply testing my abilities. I hadn't realized the river was occupied. The anger on the Naiad's face faded as she contemplated what to do next. Seeing a chance, Indra continued speaking. I live just outside the forest here. He pointed to the left past the small hill the river had sunk into. Would it be okay if I trained in your waters? While no diplomat, Indra knew better than to force his hand over something that could be accomplished through dialogue. It was something he had quite intimately learned after dealing with Naruto's charismatic speeches and the various villages in the elemental nations. If he could win a truce of sorts with a potential ally near his home, she could prove useful down the line when Susanu's protection wore off. The Naiad looked at him funny for a moment before a small smile graced her lips. Usually no one asks before using my river. Not the other nymphs, not the occasional annoying satyr, and definitely not the humans. Indra watched as a small blush rose on her cheeks and her hands began playing with her hair. She looked down, not meeting him in the eye. I guess it would be fine if it's you, she mumbled before looking back up to him. Ah, young love. But the Naiad spoke, her tone hardening. Don't think this means I'm leaving you alone by yourself. You'd better not cause any damage to the banks or mess up my river or there will be hell to pay. HN.